The rain in Seattle doesn't just fall, it bullies you. It was 9:05 p.m. and the October sky was leaking dirty water all over the wharf. I was already 5 minutes late for my shift at the North Pier Supper Club, which meant my paycheck would be docked another 5. My sneakers, the ones with holes in the soles I pretended weren't there, felt like two cold, heavy sponges. I'm Raina Park, and I'm a professional nodder. I nod when customers are rude. I nod when the chef yells. And I nod when my landlord, Mr. Dallow, slides an eviction warning under my door. That pink slip, currently folded in my back pocket, felt heavier than my wet shoes. They always make the final notices pink, like it's supposed to soften the blow. Congratulations, you're officially screwed. I pushed through the heavy oak door of the club, the warm air smelling of old money, spilled wine, and desperation. Mostly my desperation. You're late. Park Marty, my shift lead, grunted without looking up from his reservation book. Sorry, Marty, the bus. Save it. Section 3. You've got the VIP corner. Don't mess it up. I suppressed a groan. Section 3 was the graveyard, and in the deepest, darkest booth of the graveyard sat the VIP. He was alone, which was strange for the corner booth. That table was usually reserved for tech bros trying to close a deal or politicians pretending not to be with their mistresses. This guy was just still. He wore a dark wool coat, the kind that costs more than my annual rent, but he wore it casually, like it was armor he'd forgotten he had on. His hair was dark, slicked back slightly by the rain he'd just walked in from. He wasn't looking at the menu. He was just watching the room, his eyes scanning everything, but settling on nothing. It was a gaze that didn't just look, it assessed. I grabbed my pad, smoothed my apron, and put on the smile that paid the rent, or at least was supposed to. Evening. Can I get you started with something? His gaze landed on me. It wasn't friendly, and it wasn't rude. It was heavy, like being weighed and measured. For a second, I felt completely transparent, like he could see the pink slip in my pocket and the $73.40 in my bank account. Rye, he said. His voice was low, gravelly, like he'd been gargling rocks. Straight. Just one. Just one? I nodded. Be right back. To me, he was just Mr. Straight rye, another quiet drinker taking up valuable real estate on a Friday night. I didn't know his name was Lorenzo Gravano. I didn't know that when he looked at the room. He wasn't just watching it, he was owning it. I just knew he was in the way of me getting a four-top that might actually tip. I brought him his drink and turned to table 7, where a bachelor party was getting loud. As I leaned over to clear plates, one of them, a guy with a pink tie and too much cologne, decided to get handsy. His fingers grazed the small of my back, lingering too long. Hey, sunshine, he slurred, his voice too loud. What time do you get off? We're heading to the W. It's going to be epic. I tensed, the familiar hot flash of annoyance rising. This was the part of the job description they leave out. I tried to step back, but he leaned with me, blocking me against the table. Sir, my shift ends late. Come on, don't be like that. One drink, loosen up. His hand moved from my back to my arm, his grip tightening. This was the part where you have to smile while you're being cornered. I was calculating the fastest way to get Marty without making a scene, which would also get me yelled at when the air in the room suddenly changed. It got cold. The drunk guy froze. His hand, which had been tightening on my arm, just stopped, suspended in midair. I glanced over my shoulder. Mr. Straight Rye, in the dark corner booth, hadn't moved a muscle, and he was just looking. He slowly lifted his glass, a small, 2-inch salute, and met the drunk's eyes across the room. He didn't say a word. He didn't scowl. He just looked. The drunk guy turned pale. Not just, oh, I'm caught, pale. This was, I just saw a ghost in my soup, pale. He snatched his hand back like he'd touched a hot stove. He sat straight down in his chair, picked up his menu, and stared at it with blinding intensity. It was like someone had reached over and just pulled his batteries out. The rest of his table got quiet, glancing between the drunk and the corner booth. I blinked, adjusting my apron. I mumbled a quiet thank you toward the corner. Mister. Rye just gave a slow, barely perceptible nod and went back to studying his drink. I figured the drunk must have recognized him as a CEO, or maybe his boss's boss. I still had no clue. I just had tables to clear. An hour later, as I was loading a tray with espresso cups, Marty grabbed me by the prep station. Hey, park. He looked confused, which was his default state, but this was a new flavor of it. The quiet guy in your section booth 4. He left this for you. He slid a thick, heavy envelope into my apron pocket. It wasn't the usual flimsy cash envelope. This was linen, heavy and stiff. A tip, I asked, my pulse quickening. A tip like that could cover the late fee. Guess so. A big one, from the feel of it. Said you, handled yourself well. Marty shrugged, already distracted. Weird guy. Didn't even finish his drink. I ducked into the dry storage closet, the smell of bulk spices and cardboard filling my nose. My hands were shaking a little. I needed the cash. God, I needed it. I tore open the envelope, but there wasn't any cash. Inside, nestled in the thick paper, was a phone, a burner, one of those old-school black plastic bricks you see in spy movies. It was heavy, anonymous, and unlocked. My heart didn't just skip. It stalled. It hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. This isn't a tip. This is something else. This is trouble, the kind of trouble that doesn't care if your rent is late. Raina, order up. Table 6. Where are you? The chef's voice snapped me back. I shoved the phone deep into my apron, the plastic case digging into my hip. My mind was racing. Why me? What did I do? The kitchen was its usual chaos, steam hissing, pans clanging, the printer spitting out orders like confetti. The whole rhythm of the restaurant felt frantic, like a drumbeat speeding up to a crash. I grabbed the tray of seared scallops and hurried out. As I passed the now empty corner booth, I couldn't help it. I looked. He was gone. But as I turned, I caught his eye. He hadn't left the building. He was standing by the coat check, shrugging into that expensive wool coat. He was looking right at me. His eyes weren't cold this time. They weren't heavy. They were sharp. It was a warning. A clear, silent message that shot across the crowded room and hit me right in the chest. Don't ask. Don't speak. Just hold on to it. I dropped the scallops at table 6, my hands trembling so badly a lady asked me if I was cold. I spent the next 3 hours trying not to touch the heavy, rectangular weight in my pocket, feeling like I had a live grenade strapped to my waist. 2 a.m. The club was finally empty. The chairs were up on the tables, and the rain had settled into a miserable, driving wind. I clocked out, my feet aching, my mind still buzzing about the phone. I bundled up in my threadbare jacket, clutching my thin backpack to my chest, and stepped out onto the pier. The wind hit me like a physical shove. The air smelled of salt, diesel, and the faint, rotten smell of low tide. The wharf was empty, just pools of oily light from the lampposts reflecting on the wet pavement. And a black SUV. It was parked halfway down the pier, engine off, lights out. It was one of those big, menacing ones that look like they belong to the government, except this one had no plates. Just walk fast. Raina, don't look. Mind your own business. I put my head down, the wind whipping my hair across my face, but as I passed it, 3 doors opened simultaneously. 3 shadows detached themselves from the darkness. They weren't in uniform, but they had the same build. All shoulders and bad intentions. Evening, ma'am. The one in the middle stepped directly in front of me. He was smiling, but his eyes were dead. Can I help you? I clutched my bag tighter. The phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. We had a report, he said, the smile never wavering, of a theft from the club tonight, an employee. We're just going to need to check your bag. My blood went cold. They knew. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a waitress. I didn't steal anything. Then you won't mind if we look. He reached for my backpack. I stumbled back, right into the second guy. I was trapped. Hey, get off me. I didn't take anything. Just make this easy. Kid, Give us the item, and we'll let you go home. Click. It wasn't a loud sound. It was the soft, mechanical sound of a high-quality umbrella opening. A voice, low and sharp, cut through the wind. She's with me. I twisted my head, my heart in my throat. It was him, Mr. Straight Rye, Lorenzo. He had appeared from nowhere and standing just outside the circle of the SUV's open doors. He held a large, black umbrella, the classic, expensive kind with a curved wooden handle. He wasn't looking at me, and he was looking at the man in the middle. The man, who'd been all smiles and menace, dropped his hand from my bag. He stared at Lorenzo. This is private business. Walk away. Lorenzo took one slow step forward, bringing him under the edge of the lamplight. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The wind itself seemed to quiet down to listen. I don't think you heard me. I said, she's with me. The leader of the three thugs looked at Lorenzo, really looked at him, and whatever he saw made his fake confidence evaporate like water on a hot pan. Lorenzo made a small, almost invisible gesture with his free hand, a flick of the wrist, a dismissal. It wasn't a threat. It was a command. The lead thug nodded, once, sharp. Our mistake, he motioned to his men. We're done here. They didn't apologize. They didn't say another word. They just piled back into the plateless SUV, shut the doors with a heavy thunk, and drove off, disappearing into the rain. I was left standing there, shaking so hard I thought my knees would buckle. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding. It came out as a ragged gasp. The quiet man, Lorenzo, stepped closer, angling the umbrella to cover me. The rain, which had been stinging my face, suddenly stopped. Which way, he asked. What, I stammered, still staring at the empty space where the SUV had been. Which way do you live? Oh, Rainier Valley. The bus stop is just... The buses stopped running an hour ago. He nodded up the street. We'll walk. That's miles. You don't have to do that. I can call a cab. I couldn't, but I said it anyway. I know. He just started walking, holding the umbrella steady, leaving just enough room for me to fall and step beside him. We walked for nearly 30 minutes without saying a word. The only sounds were our footsteps on the pavement and the constant, rhythmic drumming of the rain on the taut fabric above us. He held the umbrella perfectly centered over me, while his own shoulder, the one in the expensive wool coat, was getting soaked. He didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't care. I should have been terrified. I was walking through a dark, empty city at 2:30 in the morning with a total stranger who had just scared off 3 other, scarier strangers with a hand gesture. But I wasn't scared. I was just quiet. For the first time all night, the frantic buzzing in my head had stopped. We reached my block, Beacon Court. It's not much. Just a narrow alley leading to a rundown brick tenement building that always smells like damp drywall and old curry. Home sweet home. I stopped at the entrance to the alley. This is me. He stopped, too, standing just outside the alley's darkness. The rain dripped from the brim of the umbrella, catching the light. He gave a slight bow of his head. Good night, Raina. I froze. My keys, halfway out of my pocket, stopped moving. I hadn't told him my name. I wasn't wearing a name tag. Marty hadn't used my name when he'd given me the phone. How? I whispered, the word barely audible over the rain. How do you know my name? He just looked at me, his eyes unreadable in the shadow of the umbrella. Get inside. Lock your door. He turned, not waiting for an answer, and walked away, the sound of his footsteps fading as he disappeared back into the Seattle mist. I ran up the 3 flights of stairs, my heart pounding a new, frantic rhythm. I fumbled with the lock, slammed the door behind me, and threw the deadbolt. I leaned against the wood, breathing hard, the cold from my wet clothes seeping into my skin. My tiny one-room apartment was cold. I didn't turn on the light. I just stood there in the dark, listening to the storm. After a minute, I pulled the burner phone from my apron. It felt heavy in my hand, dangerous. I clicked the on button. The screen glowed to life, bright in the darkness. There was no call history, no contacts, just one item in the gallery. I opened it. It was a single photograph. It was taken at night, probably with a good lens. It showed a shipping container, a big one, painted a specific, ugly, mossy green on the side. Stenciled in white was a logo I'd seen on trucks all over the port Novastar Logistics. In the corner of the photo, someone had superimposed a digital image of a calendar page. Just one day, a Thursday, circled in red. That was it, a container and a date. I stared at it, confused, until a new notification popped up on the screen. It wasn't a text message. It was one of those hidden, self-deleting notes. I opened it, 5 words. If you want to live, don't reply to this number. I snapped the flip phone shut. I tossed it onto my rickety kitchen table as if it had burned me. If you want to live. I looked out my window. The city was a blur of wet neon and black sky. The rain hammered against the glass, a frantic tapping noise. It wasn't just rain anymore. It sounded like Morse code, a message I couldn't understand, tapping out a warning over and over and over. And I knew, standing there in my tiny, cold room, that whatever Mr. Straight Rye had just walked me into, I was already in way too deep. I didn't sleep for more than 20 minutes at a time. The burner phone sat on my kitchen table, a black plastic brick radiating bad decisions. I'd thrown a dish towel over it, like I could hide from it in my own 10 by 10 studio, but I could still feel it there, pulsing with the silent, 5-word message. If you want to live, don't reply. The sun came up, pale and watery, as if it, too, was exhausted by Seattle. The rain had paused, but the sky was a bruised, heavy gray. Fear doesn't pay the bills. The pink eviction notice was still in my pocket, and the fear of Mr. Dallow was, for the moment, more real than the fear of men in plateless SUVs. So, I got up. I made instant coffee that tasted like burnt dirt, put on my other pair of worn-out sneakers, and went to my day job. By 9 a.m., I was at Little Hanjung, a small, family-run faux shop in the International District. I wasn't a waitress here. I was the prep cook, the dishwasher, and the backup server. The pay was terrible. But Mrs. Kim paid me in cash and let me eat all the broken spring rolls I wanted. My cousin, Ha Yun, was already there, wiping down the laminated tables. She's the only real family I have left on this side of the Pacific. My mother passed from pneumonia when I was 16, and my father, he took one look at the hospital bills and the stack of debt she'd left behind, said the American dream was a rigged game, and flew back to Korea. He wasn't wrong, but Ha-Yun stayed. We've been propping each other up ever since. You look like you slept in a dryer. Raina, she said, not unkindly, as I tied on a stained white apron. Rough night at the club, I mumbled, heading for the cooler to pull out the basil and bean sprouts. You should quit that place. It's not safe. It pays double what this does. Ha-un. And it's the only thing standing between us and Mr. Dallow. She winced. She didn't have an answer for that. None of us did. I spent the next 7 hours in a steamy, fragrant haze, my hands smelling of star anise, lime, and bleach. I listened to the kitchen radio, a crackly old box tuned to the local news. They were talking about the port again. A major step forward for the city. A smooth, political voice announced, "The formation of the PSCC, the Port Security Commission of Cascadia, will finally bring transparency and accountability to our shipping lanes." I rolled my eyes, chopping cilantro with more force than necessary, and the PSCC, this new quasi-public commission everyone was suddenly talking about. I've been in this city long enough to know what quasi-public means. It means it has the power of the government, but none of the oversight. It's just a fancier brand of thief, one with a logo and a press secretary, cleaning up the banyan tree of corruption, the man said. Right, they weren't cleaning anything. They were just kicking the old families out so they could plant their own. I finished my shift, my back aching, and walked back to Beacon Court to change for my second job. Mr. Dallow was waiting by the mailboxes, jingling his keys. He's a small man who tries to make up for it by smelling like cheap cologne and moral superiority. "Miss Park," he said, the smile not reaching his eyes, "the first has come and gone. Your payment is now 7 days late." "I know, Mr. Dallow. I get paid from the club this Friday. I can give you the full amount then, plus the late fee." He sighed, a theatrical, put-upon sound. "I'm sure you will, but the building owners, they're very concerned about market rates. Rates in this area are up. Oh, a good 20% since you signed your lease. I'm trying to protect you, but if I don't have the full current amount by Monday, I'll have no choice but to file a report with the Bureau of Civic Compliance." My stomach tightened. The Bureau of Civic Compliance. It sounded so official, like a department from City Hall. But everyone in Beacon Court knew what it was. It was a private collection firm run out of a strip mall in Kent. They were legal loan sharks, hired by landlords to do the dirty work. They didn't just evict you, they seized your property for non-compliance fees. It was extortion with a business license. "I'll have it," I said, my voice tight. "Monday." He nodded, satisfied he'd ruined my day, and walked out. I ran up the stairs, my chest tight. I had exactly 3 days to come up with almost $2,000. The shift at the North Pier Supper Club was a blur of needy customers and kitchen fires. I was jumpy. Every time the heavy oak door opened, I expected to see the men in bomber jackets or the thugs from the SUV. I kept my hand near my apron pocket, where the burner phone was now tucked, feeling like a heavy, cold secret. Then, at 10:30, he walked in. Lorenzo. He wasn't in the heavy wool coat from last night. Tonight, he wore a dark, impeccably tailored suit that probably cost more than my cousin's car. He looked less like a shadow and more like a weapon. He didn't glance at Marty. He didn't scan the room. He just walked directly to my section, to the same dark corner booth, and sat down. My heart hammered against my ribs. Marty saw him, then looked at me and raised an eyebrow. "Your friend is back. Go take his order." My palms were sweating. I grabbed my pad, walked over, and tried to keep my voice steady. "Good evening. Welcome back." He was looking at the menu, though I doubted he was reading it. He glanced up, and that heavy, assessing gaze settled on me again. But this time, there was something else. Recognition. "Chiopino," he said, his voice that same quiet gravel, and a rye, straight. "Right away." I brought him the drink. I set it down on the coaster. My pulse was roaring in my ears. I had to ask. I couldn't not ask. "Last night," I whispered, my voice so low I could barely hear it. "On the pier. The men thank you." He didn't answer immediately. He picked up the glass, studied the amber liquid, and took a slow sip. He looked past me, out the rain-lashed window at the dark, churning water of the bay. Then he set the glass down with a soft, definitive click. "Seattle gets a lot of rain," he said, his eyes finally meeting mine. A faint, almost invisible smile touched the corner of his mouth. "It's easy to catch a chill, walking alone." It was nothing. It was a statement, a confirmation. "I saw you, I knew you were in trouble. I acted, it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold." I nodded, speechless, and turned to my other tables. An hour passed. The restaurant was loud, filled with the clatter of silverware and the laughter of people who didn't have eviction notices in their pockets. Lorenzo ate his stew slowly, methodically. He never looked at his phone. He just watched the room. Then the front door opened, and the vibe of the whole restaurant shifted. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. It was a group of 4 men. They were all wearing identical black bomber jackets, dark jeans, and heavy boots. They had military-style buzz cuts and the kind of dead-eyed stare that makes your skin crawl. They weren't here for dinner. They stood by the hostess stand, cracking their knuckles, stretching their necks, just scanning. Their eyes moved from table to table, over the bar, toward the kitchen doors. They were hunters. Marty started to walk over. His "do you have a reservation" smile plastered on, but the lead guy just held up a hand, silencing him without a word. They were looking for someone. My blood turned to ice water. Were they looking for me? For the phone? Were they connected to the men from the SUV? Lorenzo, in his corner booth, hadn't turned around. He hadn't flinched. He just calmly placed his spoon on the plate, a quiet tink in the sudden hush. He was wiping his mouth with his linen napkin. He didn't look at me, but he spoke, his voice perfectly clear and quiet under the ambient noise. The back door, to the left of the kitchen. I froze. What? There's a service exit. Go. Now. Throw the heavy bolt and do not panic, Reina. The sound of my name, spoken so calmly in the middle of this, was what moved me. It was a direct order, wrapped in a strange kind of protection. I didn't run. I placed my empty tray on a service stand, turned, and walked at a steady, professional pace toward the swinging kitchen doors. I could feel the eyes of the bomber jacket crew on my back. I pushed into the heat and noise of the kitchen. Chef, table 4 needs a new fork. Dropped his. I called out just to make sound. I walked past the steaming dish pit, past the sizzling grill, to the cold, steel delivery door in the back. It was marked employees only. I grabbed the heavy, foot-long steel bolt, the kind they use to lock up a fortress, and slammed it home. The thunk was deafening in the small alcove. I leaned my forehead against the cold metal, breathing hard. From the dining room, I heard something. The scrape of a chair on the hardwood floor. A low, tense murmur of voices. And then silence. Not quiet, not a lull, a complete, total vacuum of space silence. The jazz music had even stopped. I counted to 30, my heart trying to escape my chest. Then, the kitchen doors swung open, and Marty stumbled in, his face white as a napkin. "What the hell, what just," he stammered. "What happened?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Those guys, they just left. The guy in your booth, he just looked at them. And they left." I waited another full minute before I unbolted the door and peeked out. The bomber jacket crew was gone. The restaurant was slowly coming back to life. People whispering, looking around. Lorenzo Gravano was sipping his rye as if he'd been reading a newspaper the whole time. He signaled for the check 10 minutes later. My hand was still shaking as I brought the black leather folder to his table. He put a credit card inside. I ran it. The name on the card just said L. Gravano. I brought the slip back for his signature. He picked up the cheap plastic pen, looked at me, and then, on the merchant copy line, he didn't sign his name. He wrote an address. Orchard and 5th. I stared at the black ink. Orchard and 5th. I knew that intersection. It was deep in the industrial district, down by the port, right where the Nova Star Logistics freight yard was, right where a moss green container was waiting. He pushed the folder back to me. Tucked underneath it was a crisp, folded $100 bill. He stood, adjusting the cuffs of his suit jacket. He looked at me, his eyes impossible to read. "Be careful, Reina." Then he was gone. I stood there, my mind spinning. $100 for the rent and an address. This man, this enigma, he pulls me from the rain. He saves me from thugs on the pier. He faces down a crew of operators in the middle of a crowded restaurant and makes them vanish with a look. He's my savior. But he's also the man who gave me the phone. He's the man who knows my name. And now, he's just given me a map that points directly to the X on the treasure map. Why? Why would a man who goes out of his way to protect me simultaneously point me toward the very center of the storm? I got home at 3 a.m. The apartment was cold. Ha-Yun was asleep on the futon, but a small lamp was on at our tiny kitchen table. She'd been looking at the classifieds, at the cars for sale section. She woke up as I shut the door. "Hey," she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "Hey." I dropped my keys. The $100 bill heavy in my pocket. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough. "I was looking," she said, her voice thick with sleep and defeat. "I think I can get maybe $2,500 for the Civic. If I sell it private party, it would cover this month and next, and the deposit for a new place." I looked at her. My cousin, willing to sell her car, her only way to her community college classes, the one thing that was truly hers, just to keep us afloat for another 60 days. I looked at the rain streaking down the glass of our single window. I thought of the moss green container from the photograph, Nova Star Logistics. I thought of the address on the receipt, Orchard and 5th. I thought of the circled date, Thursday. That was 2 days from now. Lorenzo hadn't told me to go. He hadn't threatened me. He'd protected me. And then he'd invited me. He was showing me a door. I put my hand on Ha-Eun's shoulder. "Don't sell the car," I said, my voice suddenly clear and steady. She looked up at me, confused. "Reina, we have to—" "Don't sell the car," and I repeated. "I think I found a way. Let me handle Dallo. I just need a couple of days." It was a lie. I didn't have a plan. I had a photograph, an address, and a date. And I had a feeling that whatever was in that container was either the answer to all my problems or the beginning of a whole set of new ones. I was going to Orchard and 5th. I was going on Thursday. I had to know. I lay down on my cot, but I didn't sleep. I just watched the city lights reflect on the wet ceiling. Across the street, parked in the shadows, a dark sedan I didn't recognize sat with its lights off. I didn't even notice it was there. I was too busy thinking about the storm. The 2 days I waited for Thursday to arrive were the longest of my life. I walked through my shifts at the ego shop and the supper club like a ghost, my body chopping basil and clearing plates while my mind was miles away, fixed on a moss-green container. Every time the phone buzzed, I jumped, but it was just Ha-Eun asking what kind of milk to buy. The burner phone stayed silent under my mattress. I told Ha-Eun I was covering a double shift for someone at the club. The lie tasted like ash, but the thought of her selling her car tasted worse. By 8 p.m. on Thursday, I was standing on the corner of Orchard and 5th. This wasn't the tourist wharf. This was the city's industrial gut. The air here didn't smell like salt and pine. It smelled like diesel, hot metal, and the rank low-tide smell of the mud flats. The only light came from tall, humming sodium vapor lamps that cast everything in a sickly orange glow. The sound was a constant, low-frequency rumble, the thrum of idling semis, the distant metallic shriek of a crane, and the bass-heavy groan of a ship easing into its berth. The address Lorenzo had written, Orchard and 5th, was nothing, just a chain-link fence topped with razor wire, but behind it was the Nova Star Logistics Yard. I clutched my old smartphone, the one with the cracked screen. The burner was a warning. Lorenzo's receipt was an invitation. I was here to accept. I walked the fence line for 100 yards, my sneakers crunching on the gravel. I found what I was looking for, a section where the fence met a concrete abutment, rusted through at the bolts. It was just wide enough to squeeze through. I slipped into the yard. I was in a canyon of steel. Containers were stacked 6 high, creating narrow, dark alleys. I felt tiny, exposed. Every shadow looked like one of the men from the pier. I moved deeper, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. Red container, blue container, white, gray. Where was it? Then I saw it. Under a floodlight, a forklift, its reverse beep, 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 cutting the air, was lifting a container from a stack. It was that specific, ugly, moss green. I saw the stencil on the side 7K, the container from the photograph. My breath hitched. I was in the right place. But the forklift wasn't loading it onto a ship. It was carrying it inland, toward a long, low warehouse at the back of the property. The building looked abandoned, but the loading bay door was rolled up. A faded sign above it read Northway Produce. Produce. I crept closer, ducking behind a stack of rotting wooden pallets that smelled like turpentine. I was maybe 50 feet from the bay. From here, I could see inside. I pulled out my phone, wiped the rain from the cracked screen, and hit record. A man was directing the forklift, motioning it back. He wore a dirty, striped thermal shirt, and a tattoo crawled up the side of his neck from under the collar. I zoomed in, the digital grain flickering. It was one word: vessel. The forklift set the container down with a heavy, metallic groan. Vessel and two other guys grabbed crowbars and started prying open the doors. They weren't hauling pineapples. They were unloading heavy wooden crates, unmarked except for a stenciled label. I zoomed in again, holding my breath to keep the phone steady. The label read, TLM-9, Tactical Learning Machines. It sounded high-tech. Vessel cracked one of the crates open. He pulled out the contents. My blood went cold. I knew what that was. It wasn't a learning machine. It was a stack of gray plastic casings. Vessel took one, slotted a keypad into place, and snapped a front panel on. Click. It was a point-of-sale terminal, a card reader. The exact model they used at the North Pier Supper Club. The exact model at every coffee shop, gas station, and diner in the city. Except these were clean, blank. No manufacturer logos, no serial numbers. They weren't just shipping card readers. They were shipping the tools to steal identities, to skim numbers, to drain accounts. This was a factory for financial ruin. I kept recording, panning across the crates, the container, the Northway produce sign. A white van crunched onto the gravel, pulling right up to the bay. It was unmarked. No company name. No license plates. The driver's door opened. A man hopped out, wearing a dark blue baseball cap. He walked into the light, and I zoomed in on the cap. My heart stopped. It was the logo from the radio, the logo from the news PSCC, the Port Security Commission of Cascadia, the new quasi-public good guys who were here to clean up the banyan tree of corruption. But I looked closer. I'd seen the logo on a news broadcast just yesterday. The official font was sharp, angular. This one was wrong. The S was too wide. The C was too round. It was a fake. Vessel didn't ask for ID. He didn't ask for a manifest. He just jerked his chin. You're late. Got held up. The fake PSCC guy grunted. He and Vessel loaded two of the TLM-9 crates into the back of the van. No paperwork. No signatures. This wasn't an inspection. It was a handoff. I had it. I had all of it. The container, the shell company, the fake hardware, the fake port commissioner. I'd seen enough. I started to back away, moving slow, one step at a time. My phone was still recording. My heel hit an empty 55-gallon oil drum. Clang! The sound was like a cannon shot in the relative quiet. Everybody froze. Vessel and the fake PSCC guy snapped their heads in my direction. Who the hell is that? The headlights from the van flashed on, pinning me. I was a deer, caught, blind. Get her. I turned to run. A hand clamped down on my wrist like a bear trap. A shadow had detached itself from the stack of pallets behind me. I hadn't even known he was there. It was one of the men from the restaurant, the one with the buzz cut and the bomber jacket. Well, well, he sneered, twisting my arm behind my back. I cried out, "What are you doing here, little girl? Give me the phone." "I don't know anything," I gasped, trying to twist away. "Let me go." Wrong answer. He started to drag me toward the light of the loading bay. My phone clattered to the gravel. "That's enough, Anthony." The voice. Lorenzo's voice. It wasn't loud, but it sliced through the air and stopped everyone cold. He stepped out of the warehouse, emerging from the deep shadow like he was part of it. He wasn't in a suit. He was dressed like them Dark Henley. Dark pants. He looked like just another worker. Until you saw his eyes. The man holding me, Anthony, went rigid. Lorenzo didn't even look at me. His gaze was fixed on Anthony's hand, which was still crushing my wrist. "Let her go. She's my witness." Witness. Anthony's eyes widened in something that looked like terror. He dropped my arm like it was electrified. I stumbled back, gasping, grabbing my phone from the gravel. Vessel and the fake PSCC guy just stood there, paralyzed. "Boss?" Vessel stammered, his tough guy act completely gone. "We didn't know. We thought she was a snoop." Lorenzo ignored him. He walked past them, past the crates, to a heavy industrial way station used for freight. He took something from his pocket. It wasn't a phone. It wasn't a weapon. It was a small, solid piece of metal. It looked like a credit card, but made of heavy, black, milled steel. He placed it on the scale. It landed with a heavy, definitive clack. I could see the engraving, catching the orange light. It was a bird, a small, stylized finch, wings spread, the black finch. The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. Anthony took 2 steps back. Vessel wouldn't even look at it. It wasn't a company logo. It was a flag, a sigil, the kind of internal signal that meant this conversation is over. Lorenzo turned, grabbed my elbow, his grip firm, but not bruising like Anthony's, and pulled me back into the deepest shadows, behind a wall of crates marked Korean pears. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered, his voice low and urgent, angry. "I gave you the phone so you'd know trouble was coming. I gave you the address so you'd have a choice. I didn't think you'd be this reckless." "Reckless," I whispered back, my voice shaking with adrenaline and fury. "My landlord is throwing me out on Monday. Those men from the pier, they work for you." "No," he said, sharp. "They work for him. I just know their schedule." He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He looked exhausted. "You don't owe me anything but your silence. Raina, but you're in it now. You're standing in the warehouse. So you're going to listen." He pointed to the manifest on the crate next to us. "Novastar Logistics moves the product. Those fake PSCC guys, they provide the security and clear the routes." He pulled out his own phone, a sleek, modern one. He pulled up a diagram. It looked like a corporate flowchart. "Novastar is a laundry," he said, his finger tracing a line. "They're washing money for this." He tapped a logo, Alder Ridge Capital. "It's a tech investment fund. Very clean, very public." The card readers, skimmers, ghosts, they get seeded into the supply chain, skim 1/10 of a cent from every 1,000 transactions. It adds up, fast. The money gets laundered through Novastar and dumped into Alder Ridge. And the fake cops, hired muscle. They're from a private security firm called Thornwell Risk Management. Who runs it? Lorenzo's voice went flat, cold. A man named Jared Thornwell. The papers call him a wunderkind, a 30 under 30 startup genius. He's on the cover of magazines. He's also the most sophisticated predator in the Pacific Northwest. A sick feeling of dread bloomed in my stomach. What does he want, money? He has money. He wants power. He wants to own this city. And his next pet project is a massive innovation center. A new, shining tech campus built on the water. I don't understand. It's where he wants to build it. Raina. Lorenzo looked at me, his eyes pinning me in the dark. He needs the land. He needs your land. He's buying up all the debt on the properties in Beacon Court, in Rainier Valley. Mister. Dallow doesn't work for your landlord. He works for Thornwell's Bureau of Civic Compliance. It's not a city agency. It's just another one of his shell companies. They aren't just trying to evict you. Raina, they're trying to cleanse the entire district so he can build his glass towers. It hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a late rent check. This was a war. And my apartment building was the battlefield. "I have an interest in seeing Thornwell fall," Lorenzo said, his voice a low monotone. "You have an interest in keeping your home. Our goals, they align." I stared at him, the noise of the port, the rain, the trucks, it all faded away. "Who are you? You're not a cop. You're not them. You have a finch." He looked past me, out toward the dark water. "I'm a man who lost his home to people just like Jared Thornwell. I just learned how to fight back." Before I could ask what that meant, a new sound cut the night. Sirens, but not police. These were different. A high-low wee-woo that sounded European. Lorenzo grabbed my arm. "We're out of time." "Is that the police?" "No, it's his police." 2 black sedans, the same model that had cornered me on the pier, screamed onto the gravel, their headlights flashing. They fishtailed to a stop, blocking the entrance to the yard. Men in dark blue windbreakers piled out. They had letters stenciled on their backs in white FCIB. "FCIB," I panted. "Federal Commercial Integrity Bureau." Lorenzo spat. "Another ghost. As federal as Northway Produce, Thornwell's private army, dressed up to scare off the real authorities. Run. He didn't go for the fence. He ran straight through the warehouse, toward the water on the other side. This way. He slammed his shoulder into a rusty fire exit. The door burst open. We were on a narrow metal catwalk, 20 feet above the dark, churning water of the bay. "Gravano stop FCIB," a voice bellowed from inside the warehouse. Lorenzo didn't slow down. He pointed to the end of the catwalk, a wide metal discharge chute, slick with rain and algae, angled down into the darkness. "You have got to be kidding me," I yelled over the wind. "I don't kid!" He sprinted to the chute, grabbed a heavy metal grate covering it, and tore it from its rusty hinges. He tossed it aside. "Heels first. Go!" He didn't wait. He swung his legs in and was gone, sliding into the black. "Raina now," his voice echoed up from the chute. I heard the thud, thud, thud of boots on the catwalk behind me. I took a breath, held my phone to my chest, and jumped. It was fast, cold, and terrifying. I slid down the metal, the smell of rust and seawater filling my lungs. I shot out the bottom, out into the open air, bracing for the freezing shock of the water. Thud! I didn't hit the water. I landed hard on a rubber-matted deck. Lorenzo was already there, pulling me to my feet. We were in a low, black speedboat, the kind with massive engines that had been idling in the shadows under the pier. A man I hadn't even seen was at the wheel. He didn't say a word. He just hit the throttle. The engines roared, a sound so loud it vibrated in my teeth. The boat rocketed away from the pier, slamming against the chop. The cold spray of Elliott Bay hit my face like a handful of icy needles. I looked back. The fake FCIB agents were at the end of the pier, just dark silhouettes against the orange light. Too late, watching us disappear into the rain. I collapsed onto a bench, soaked to the bone, shaking but clutching my phone, which had a video of everything. I looked at Lorenzo, and he was standing next to the driver, his hair plastered to his head, wringing out the bottom of his shirt. He was as calm as if he'd just stepped off a ferry. "My phone!" I panted, my voice ragged. "I got it. I got the van. I got the crates. I filmed it all." He turned, and in the dim green light of the boat's console, I saw him nod. A flicker of something approval respect passed through his dark eyes. "I know," he said, his voice just audible over the engines. "That's why we had to run." He looked down at the phone I was gripping like a lifeline. "That's your leverage. Raina, that's your home. Now we just have to figure out how to cash it in." The roar of the twin engines was a physical thing, a vibration that went straight through the thin metal deck and into my bones. We hit a wave, and the boat slammed down. Launching me off the bench, I landed hard on the deck, the cold, salty spray hitting my face like 1,000 tiny needles. I was soaked, freezing, and covered in a layer of grime from the discharge chute. I was still clutching my phone, the screen dark, the video file safely stored. Lorenzo was standing near the pilot, a man who hadn't spoken, hadn't even looked at me. Lorenzo was just staring back at the lights of the pier. Now shrinking in the distance, he, too, was soaked, his dark Henley plastered to his chest, but he wasn't shaking. I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. It wasn't just the cold, it was the adrenaline crash, the terror of the last hour hitting me all at once. He must have heard it, that rhythmic click, click, click of my teeth. He turned. He looked at me, huddled on the deck, my arms wrapped around my knees. He moved, bracing himself against the boat's violent motion. He grabbed a heavy, oiled canvas jacket that was stowed under the console. He didn't say, "Are you cold?" He didn't ask. He just draped it over my shoulders. It was heavy. It smelled of canvas, cedar, and the clean, sharp scent of rain. It was immediately, impossibly warm. I pulled it around me, burying my face in the collar, inhaling a scent that was steady and safe. Even though the man who wore it was the most dangerous person I'd ever met. The engines dropped to a low, throbbing idle. The pilot cut the speed, and we glided out of the open bay, slipping into a narrow, dark channel I didn't recognize. We were in Inner Bay, where the massive train yards met the water. The boat slid silently into a slip. Under the rotting roof of an abandoned boathouse, the pilot cut the engines. The sudden suffocating silence was louder than the roar had been. The only sound was the water lapping against the hull and the gentle, constant drum of the rain on the corrugated tin roof. "Wait here," Lorenzo said to the pilot. He nodded, once. Lorenzo stepped off the boat onto the swaying dock and held out his hand. I looked at it. His hand was steady. It wasn't a request. It was a fact. I placed my own trembling, grimy hand in his. His grip was warm and solid. He pulled me easily onto the dock. Inside, the boathouse was vast and dark. A single bare bulb hung from a wire, casting weak yellow light over a floor littered with old nets, rusted engine parts, and the skeleton of a boat that had given up. He led me to a utility sink in the corner, caked with rust and grease. He twisted the faucet. After a long, metallic groan, a stream of cold water splashed into the basin. "Your hands," he said. It wasn't a command. I looked down. They were filthy, streaked with oil from the chute, and a long, angry scrape ran across my right wrist where Anthony had grabbed me. He found a clean rag and a bar of gritty, industrial soap. He didn't grab my hand. He just held the soap under the water, waiting. I slowly extended my hands under the stream. He put the soap in my palm. I started to scrub, but my fingers were numb and clumsy. I couldn't stop shaking. He let out a low, quiet breath. It wasn't impatient. It was something else. "Here." He gently took my left hand. He held it under the water, his fingers circling my wrist, his thumb working the soap into my palm. His movements were slow, methodical. He wasn't rushing, he was just cleaning. He was incredibly gentle, working around the raw scrape on my other wrist, carefully washing away the grime until my skin was clean. I just stood there, watching his dark head bent over my hands. I was breathing in the smell of cedar from his jacket and the metallic tang of the well water. The air between us was thick, heavy, vibrating with everything that wasn't being said. The whole world had shrunk to this single point of contact, his warm, callous thumbs moving slowly over my cold skin. When he was done, he turned off the water. He picked up the dry rag and, just as slowly, dried my hands, one finger at a time. He let me go and stepped back, creating space. The moment was broken. "Jared Thornwell," I said, my voice sounding rough in the quiet. "The man from the magazines." Lorenzo nodded, leaning back against a workbench. "The same." "And you? You're doing this because you lost your home." His eyes, dark in the dim light, found mine. "I grew up in Ocean City, Maryland. My father ran a charter boat. My grandfather, too. It was a fishing town. Our pier, it was everything, our home, our job, our future." He spoke in a low monotone, staring at the rotted hull in the center of the room. Then a fund called Seaboard Equities came in. They bought the cannery. Then they bought the bank that held all the boat loans. Then they bought the land under the pier. They raised the docking fees 500% in one summer. They foreclosed on anyone who complained. "That's what Thornwell is doing," I whispered. "The Bureau of Civic Compliance." "It's the same playbook," Lorenzo said, his voice flat. "They just changed the names. Seaboard Equities, Alder Ridge Capital. They're predators. My family was ruined. My father, he never recovered. He went from owning a business to owing a debt he could never pay. I was 19. I watched them auction off his boat for pennies on the dollar. I watched him break." He finally looked at me. "I learned how not to lose. Reina. I learned how their game is played, and I learned that the only way to beat men like that is to have leverage they can't buy." He meant the video. "My mother," I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. "She got sick. Pneumonia. She didn't have insurance. By the time it was over, the hospital bills had wiped out everything. My college fund, our savings." I looked out the dark, broken window at the rain. I had a scholarship to study finance. I had to drop out. I've been working at the club, at the faux shop, just trying to keep my head above water, trying to keep Ha-Yoon, my cousin, from sinking with me. I let out a shaky laugh. Every year, when the rain starts in October, I want to run. Just get on a bus and go somewhere dry, somewhere I don't owe anybody anything. There was a long silence. The rain beat against the tin roof, a hollow, lonely drum. "I'm not taking you anywhere, Raina," he said, his voice quiet. I looked at him, confused. "I can't offer you a bus ticket," he said. "That's not what I do. I'm just standing to block the rain." He was offering a shield, not an escape. He wasn't promising to fix my life. He was offering to help me fight for the one I had. I held his gaze. The space between us was charged. He hadn't touched me since he'd dried my hands, but I could still feel the warmth of his skin. I could feel the pull, the gravity of this man who was equal parts violence and gentleness. Bzzzt, bzzzt. The sound was alien in the quiet boathouse. It was harsh, metallic. It was coming from my jacket, the one I'd been wearing, now in a heap on the floor. I knelt, my heart suddenly pounding a new, panicked rhythm. I fumbled in the wet pocket and pulled it out. The burner phone. The screen was lit, a new message, from the same hidden, anonymous number. I opened it. "Do not trust Gravano. He will sell you." The air left my lungs. My blood, which had just started to warm up, turned to ice. "He will sell you." I looked up. Lorenzo was watching me, and he hadn't moved, but his expression had hardened. He'd seen my face. He'd seen the shift. He knew, instinctively, what had just happened. He didn't ask to see the phone. He didn't demand to know who it was. He just nodded, a slow, grim acknowledgement. "There are other players. Raina," he said, his voice low. "Thornwell isn't the only one who wants that port. Just remember what I told you." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. "I don't buy people," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "I settle debts." The ride back was silent. The pilot, Silas, dropped us in a dark alley in Soto. A mile from my apartment, the speedboat disappeared back into the fog like a ghost. The rain had softened to a steady, quiet drizzle. Lorenzo opened a black umbrella he'd taken from the boat. He held it, and we started to walk. It was just like the first night, the sound of our footsteps on the wet pavement, the city sleeping around us. But this time, I knew his name. I knew his story. I knew what he was capable of, and I had a video on my phone that could destroy a billionaire, and a warning on another phone that said the man walking next to me was just as dangerous. He angled the umbrella over me. His right shoulder was dark with rain. The gesture was so familiar, so protective. It made the warning on the burner phone feel impossible. We reached the alley of Beacon Court. The dim light from the street lamp made the wet brick glisten. I stopped at the entrance, turning to face him. His jacket was still around my shoulders, heavy with its warmth and the scent of cedar. He stopped, too. He stood on the public sidewalk. Not stepping into the alley, he wouldn't cross the threshold. He wouldn't come into my space unless I invited him. "Now what?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Now, you choose," he said. "You have the video. It's your leverage. It's your home." "What's the choice?" "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., the old fish market. Meet me by the Bronze Pig. If you come, we make a plan. We use that video. We stop him. And if I don't come," a small, sad smile touched his mouth. "If you don't come, I find another way, and you should probably find that bus ticket." He looked at me, his gaze intense. "If you come, Raina, you're in all the way, so you choose." He didn't wait for an answer. He closed the umbrella, nodded once, and walked away, disappearing into the gray, misty curtain of the Seattle night. I stood there for a long time, the rain starting to soak my hair. I clutched his jacket tighter. I went upstairs, my feet heavy on the steps. I slid the deadbolt into place. I didn't turn on the light, I just leaned my back against the door, my heart beating a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. I had the video, I had the warning, and I had an invitation. The fear was still there, cold and sharp, but it wasn't the rattling panic from the boat. This was different. It was mixed with a hot, electric hum. The feeling of holding a weapon in my hands for the first time. The dread and the curiosity, they were tangled up so tight. I couldn't tell them apart. It was a new color. The color of the Seattle sky, just before dawn. A flat, possibility-filled gray. I was there at 3 minutes till 3. The old fish market was chaos, slick with melted ice and the smell of brine. Tourists were snapping pictures of monks throwing salmon, but I just kept my head down, my gaze fixed on Rachel, the big bronze pig. Lorenzo was already there, leaning against a copper gutter, looking not at me, but at the ferry schedule on the wall. He looked like any other dock worker, lost in thought. He didn't say hello. He just pushed off the wall and jerked his chin toward a covered alley behind the Fresh Oyster Bar. I followed. The noise of the market faded, replaced by the rhythmic drip of water falling from a rusty overhang. He unrolled a large, laminated sheet of paper on top of a stack of empty crab pots. It wasn't a map, it was a flow chart, a diagram of a machine built to eat a city. "This is the machine," he said. His voice was low, competing only with the rain. "I told you Alderidge Capital was the brain and Novastar was the hands." He traced a line with his finger. "Northway Produce, where you were, is the stomach. It digests the skimmer hardware and the dirty cash." His finger landed on a new box, one at the very end of the line. And this is the angel. The box was labeled Better Harbor Charitable Fund. "A charity," I whispered, pulling the collar of his cedar-scented jacket tighter. I still had it. I hadn't been able to give it back. "The best kind," he said, his voice laced with contempt. "A non-profit dedicated to urban renewal. It buys up blighted property, petitions the city for special zoning, and promises green spaces and community innovation." He looked up from the chart, his eyes locking onto mine. "And here is the clock." He tapped a small red circle on the bottom of the schematic. "Thornwell's Better Harbor Fund has petitioned the city council. The final vote to sell the entire Beacon Court tenement block our block. RENA to the Fund for Redevelopment is in 3 days, this Monday." The air punched out of my lungs. "Monday." I said the word, tasting metal. "That's Dallow's deadline. The Bureau. They're not just evicting me, they're evicting everyone, all at once." "He's not just taking your home, Margit," Lorenzo said. "He's taking the whole zip code, and the council is going to give it to him, because he looks like a savior." "So we show them the video," I said, my hand instinctively going to my pocket, where my own phone held the recording. "We show them the skimmers, the fake PSCC." "No." He shook his head, a quick, sharp gesture. "A grainy video is not enough. Thornwell has 100 lawyers who will call it a deep fake. His PR team will say it's disgruntled employees. The city council doesn't want to see a shadow. They want to see paper. They want proof." But the manifests I saw were fakes. The ones Vessel and the fake cop were using all part of the show. The real manifests. The ones that balance the books for Northway and connect directly to Alder Ridge's accounts are on a secure server, hidden. We need those files, and we need more. We need someone from the inside to sign an affidavit to certify that the video you took is real, that the manifests are real. We need a human witness. A cold dread settled over me. Who? Milo Greer. The name meant nothing to me. "He's the warehouse supervisor at Northway Produce," Lorenzo explained. "He's the man who signs those fake manifests. He controls the server. Why on earth would he help us? He's one of them." Lorenzo's face tightened. He hated this part. I could see it. Because Thornwell doesn't just own property, RENA. He owns people. Milo's wife has a gambling debt, a bad one. Thornwell's Bureau of Civic Compliance bought it. They own him. But it's not just the money. He paused, and his voice dropped even lower. They have a young son. The boy has a rare medical condition. He needs medication every day. Just to stay stable, it's expensive. Thornwell Risk Management generously covers the copay, every month, like clockwork. as long as Milo keeps signing the fake inventory logs. It was vile. It was the worst kind of cage. It wasn't a threat of violence. It was the threat of inaction. All Thornwell had to do was stop helping, and Milo's life would fall apart. Milo's trapped, Lorenzo finished. He signs the papers. His son gets the prescription. He stops. They cut him off. He's a good man, and Thornwell is using his family's health as a leash. So what can we possibly offer him? I asked, my stomach twisting. A better deal, Lorenzo said. Freedom, he tapped his chest, where I imagine the Black Finch card sat. The Black Finch Community Fund. It's a blind trust I established years ago. It exists for one purpose: to correct these kinds of predatory debts, to cut the leash. He laid out the plan. It was simple. It was terrifying. He won't trust me, Lorenzo said. He's seen my face at the warehouse. He thinks I'm just another player. But you're a civilian. You're from Beacon Court. You're one of the people he's destroying by inches. He'll listen to you. My job, I would meet Milo tomorrow. During his lunch break, I would convince him. That night, Milo would go into the Northway server, download the real manifests, and bring them, along with his testimony. Bring them where? The book dock. It's an old, decommissioned branch library on the South Slope. It's been dark for years. It's off the grid. Inside, there's a scanner and a cold storage drive. You will help him transfer the data. You'll scan his signed affidavit. Once that drive is full, you get him out. And the fake PSCC Anthony, they'll just let him walk out. No, Lorenzo said, his face grim. The second he accesses that server from his terminal, a silent alarm will go to Thornwell Risk. They'll know he's turned. You'll have a window, an hour, maybe less. I looked at the flow chart, at the names, at the box that said Better Harbor, at the deadline Monday. I'll do it, I said. My voice didn't shake. But I have one condition. Lorenzo waited. My neighborhood. Ha'un, Mr. Dallow, all of them. They stay out of this. They don't become leverage. Not for Thornwell, and not for you. No one from Beacon Court gets used as a pawn or a contingency plan. We're not your army. He met my gaze. The rain hammered on the tin roof above us. A frantic, rattling sound. You have my word, he said. And I believed him. The Black Finch doesn't protect its own by sacrificing others. That's Thornwell's game. This is about extraction. Clean. As we started to walk out of the alley, his phone buzzed. A short, sharp vibration. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and his whole body tensed. It started, he said. Thornwell's making his move. What? His fake FCIB just issued a press release. We stepped out of the alley, and I saw it. Through the window of the Oyster Bar, the flat-screen TV over the counter was on the local news. The red chyron at the bottom of the screen was stark. Federal probe eyes port corruption. Local figures implicated. That's us, I breathed. He's investigating us. He's investigating ghosts, Lorenzo corrected, pulling me into the shadow of the next stall. It's a power play. He's projecting strength. He's telling the city council, don't worry about the rumors of corruption. I'm already handling it. He frames himself as the reformer. Look. He pointed to the stock ticker crawling below the red alert. Alder Ridge Capital Arc, plus 1.5%. It's working, I said, horrified. The council will feel safer voting yes on Monday if they think the feds are already cleaning up the port. Exactly. He's controlling the narrative. A cold, sharp smile, the first I'd ever really seen from him, touched his lips. So we give him a different narrative. He wants to look strong. We make him look sloppy. He showed me his own phone. He typed out an email. It was addressed to the general inbox for Thornwell Risk Management. The subject line was chilling. Anthony Northway, I talk. What is that? Bait, Lorenzo said. I'm pretending to be one of the dockhands from the night you were there. I'm telling Thornwell that I saw Anthony let a witness go, that's you, and that I want $50,000 by morning to keep my mouth shut. Will he believe it? He has to. He can't risk an internal leak. He'll pull half his security team off the port to hunt for a ghost. It'll keep them busy. It'll keep them away from Milo for a few hours, anyway. He hit send. The email was gone. The bait is set. The next 24 hours were the fastest, longest day of my life. I met Milo, and he was just a man. He looked like me, terrified, exhausted, and trapped. He wore glasses and a faded windbreaker. I sat in his car and showed him the video from my phone. I was there. I told him. I saw the skimmers. Then I told him about the Black Finch Fund. I didn't promise him riches. I promised him freedom. Your wife's debt, I said, my voice quiet. Gone. Wiped clean. And a private annuity for your son's medical needs. For life. He'll never have to worry about a copay again. You just have to give us the truth. He watched the video on my phone, his hands shaking. He looked at the fake PSCC logo. Then he looked at me. Tonight, he whispered. 10 p.m., the old branch library. That night, the library was a tomb. It smelled of dust, rotting paper and mildew, the book dock. Lorenzo had set it up a laptop, a high-speed scanner, and a single, heavy, cold storage drive, all running off a marine battery. At 10:13, Milo stumbled in, his face ghostly white. He was clutching a silver USB drive. I did it, he panted, locking the door behind him. But the server, it has a fail-safe. The moment I copied the directory, it sent a silent alert. They know. They're coming. Here. I shoved the drive into the laptop. The affidavit. He signed the paper I'd printed, his hand streaking the ink. I fed it into the scanner. The light bar hummed, capturing his signature, his testimony. The files finished transferring the real manifests, the internal emails from Thornwell, the schedules that match my video perfectly. I pulled the drive. It was done. Screech! Headlights flooded the tall, arched windows of the library. A white van, the same fake PSCC van from the pier, slammed to a halt on the curb. Doors flew open. The back, I yelled, shoving the heavy drive into my backpack. The children's section, there's a loose board. What about you? Milo gasped, frozen in terror. They're looking for you. They don't know I'm here. Go get your family and go to the address Lorenzo gave you. He scrambled into the darkness. I ran the other way, toward the front, and dove behind the massive, overturned circulation desk. Boom! The front doors splintered open. 4 men in the bomber jackets and fake PSCC vests piled in. It was Anthony. Fan out, he yelled, his voice echoing in the vast, empty room. He's here. Find him. Find the drive. I pressed my face to the dusty floor. I held my breath. I could hear them, knocking over shelves, their boots crunching on broken glass. Anthony stopped, not 10 feet from me. He shined his high-powered flashlight over the desk, into the darkness where I was hiding. The beam hit a small, gray box on the wall above me. Click! Whir! A blinding, intense floodlight snapped on, illuminating the entire front of the library. It was aimed directly at Anthony and his team, catching them in the act. It wasn't just a light. It was a motion-activated security camera, the real building security, left over by the city. And it was now streaming crystal-clear footage of 4 armed men, in fake federal gear, breaking into a municipal building. What the... Anthony shielded his eyes. It's a camera. We're exposed. Get that light. One of his men raised his weapon, but Anthony grabbed him. No, get out. It's a setup. He's not here. Go. They scrambled, blinded and panicked, falling over each other to get back to the van. In 30 seconds, they were gone, peeling out into the night. I let out the breath I'd been holding, my entire body shaking. It was a trap. Lorenzo hadn't just given us a safe house. He'd routed Thornwell's men right into a live security feed, creating a new crime, a public one, to discredit them. I crawled out the back window and ran. A block away, a food truck was parked under a dead streetlight. It was painted a cheerful yellow, with the words, Ha Yun's Morning Fix on the side. I yanked open the passenger door and fell into the seat. My cousin, Ha-Un, was at the wheel, her knuckles white. She didn't look at me. "You're late," she said, her voice tight with a panic I knew all too well. "I know. Drive." I slammed the door. I looked at her, my heart pounding. You're part of this." "Lorenzo Gravano paid off the loan on this truck 2 days ago," she said, her eyes fixed on the rain-slicked road. "Said he needed a reliable driver with a clean record. Said you were in trouble and you needed an exit plan." She finally looked at me, her eyes huge in the dim light. "We're in trouble, Raina." I clutched the heavy, cold drive in my backpack. It was solid. It was real. "Not anymore," I said, a strange, wild hope blooming in my chest. "I think we're going to win." We drove back to Beacon Court. She parked the truck, and I got out. I felt light. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I wasn't sinking. I had the proof. I had the leverage. We had Thornwell. I said goodnight and started to walk the few yards to my apartment door, feeling the victory. My real phone, the cracked one, buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from the Nextdoor app, the Beacon Court neighborhood group. I opened it. The post was from a brand new user, Beacon Watcher. It was a photo. A grainy, long-lens photo of me. It was from 2 nights ago, showing me climbing out of the speedboat pilot's car in this very alley. The caption was simple. "Warning dangerous. This woman is a spy for the developers. She's working with the gangs trying to push us out. Do not trust her." The drive in my bag suddenly felt worthless. He'd missed me at the library, so he'd aimed his weapons at the only other thing I had left, my home. I couldn't go back to Beacon Court. The moment I stepped out of Ha-Yun's food truck, my phone buzzed, and again it was the Nextdoor app, exploding. Then the text started. My neighbors, Mrs. Sanchez from 2B Trader, Mr. Henderson from 4A. How could you? They believed it. Of course they believed it. Beacon Watcher had posted the photo, and in their fear of Dallo and the Bureau of Civic Compliance, they'd found a target. Me. I was standing in the alley, the hard drive a heavy weight in my backpack, my victory turning to ash in my mouth. I had the proof to save my home, but I no longer had a home to save. A car pulled up, its headlights cutting through the drizzle. It wasn't one of Thornwell's sedans. It was a low, dark gray coupe. The window glided down. It was Lorenzo. He must have been waiting. "Get in," he said. His voice was flat. He'd seen the post. I got in. The car smelled like clean leather and cold night air. I didn't speak. I just stared straight ahead, watching the wipers push the rain away. "They hate me," I whispered, as he pulled out of the alley. "They're scared," he said. "Thornwell's good at that. He turns a community into a mob by aiming their fear." "And he aimed it at me. You promised to protect them." My voice finally cracked, the rage I'd been suppressing since the library, since the boat, since the first night on the pier, finally boiling over. I was shaking again, but not from cold. He didn't answer, just navigated the wet streets, heading north, away from the water, up the long hill. "Where are we going?" I demanded. "Somewhere you're not a target." We pulled into a private garage beneath a sleek, modern building in Capitol Hill. He led me to an elevator, which opened directly into his apartment. It was a loft, a massive top-floor studio. The entire far wall was glass, looking out over the city lights. But the most striking feature was the ceiling. It was almost entirely made of reinforced glass, a massive skylight. The rain was drumming on it, a constant, heavy, percussive sound, making the entire room feel like it was underwater. The place was minimalist, clean, a black leather sofa, a steel kitchen, a large, low bed. It wasn't a home, it was a fortress. I threw my backpack onto his polished concrete floor. The hard drive inside made a dull thud. This is not protection. Lorenzo," I yelled, finally turning on him. I was still wearing his heavy canvas jacket from the boat, and I ripped it off, throwing it at him. "This is a cage. A different cage." He put my face on the internet. My neighbors, the people I say hello to every morning, they think I'm the one evicting them. He caught the jacket, his face unreadable. I'm protecting you. Raina, this," he said, gesturing to the apartment, "is a safe house. What Thornwell did, it's a digital move. It's sloppy. It's desperate. He's losing." "He's winning," I shot back, pacing in front of the glass wall, the city lights blurring through my tears. "He has my home. He has my name. I have this." I kicked my backpack. "This drive, I have the proof. But what good is it if I'm a pariah? What good is saving my apartment if I can't live in it?" "We leak the drive. We give it to the press, to the council. It's the final move. Thornwell will be buried by Monday." "And what about me? What about the lie he told people will still believe it? I'll still be the gang spy. I'll just be the spy who what failed." I stopped pacing. I was so tired. The exhaustion of the last week, the last year, hit me like a physical wave. The adrenaline was gone. There was nothing left but the deep, aching fatigue of always fighting. I sank onto the arm of his sofa, my face in my hands. The fight just evaporated. "I'm so tired," I whispered, the words muffled by my palms. "I'm so tired of being strong. I'm tired of having to be the one with the plan. I'm tired of my faux shop job and my club job, see, and Mr. Dallow and skimmers and fake cops and being alone in this all the time. I'm done." The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the sound of the rain lashing the skylight. It was a wild, lonely sound. I waited for him to argue, to tell me to stand up, to tell me the plan. Instead, I heard his footsteps. He didn't approach me. He stepped back, toward the kitchen. I heard a cabinet open. When I finally looked up, he was standing a few feet away, holding a thick, dark gray towel. He wasn't looking at me with pity or anger. He was just watching me. "Then tonight," he said, his voice impossibly soft, "let me stand in front." It wasn't a command. It wasn't a promise or a pickup line. It was an offer, a request for permission. "Let me take the weight." I just stared at him. He took one step closer. "You're still damp from the library. You're cold." He didn't reach for me, and he just held out the towel. I slowly reached out and took it. It was thick, soft. As I took it, his fingers brushed mine. He didn't pull away. He just rested his hand over my knuckles. His skin was warm, his touch impossibly gentle for a man who could command a room with a look. It wasn't a grab. It was a question. I looked up at his face. His eyes were dark, and for the first time, they weren't assessing me. They weren't warning me. They were just on me, seeing me. And they were asking, "Is this okay?" I didn't have any words left, so I just nodded, a tiny, jerky, exhausted nod. Yes. He took that as his answer. He took the towel from my hand and gently, slowly brought it up to my hair, which was still damp with rain and sweat. He started to dry it, his movements slow, patient. He didn't say anything. He just stood in front of me, shielding me from the world, and focused on this one. Small, simple task. I closed my eyes, letting his strength, his steadiness seep into me. When he was done, he didn't move away. He let the towel drop, his hands still tangled in my hair. He cupped the back of my head, his thumbs resting on my temples. He leaned in, slowly. He rested his forehead against mine. I stopped breathing. I could feel his breath, warm, smelling faintly of mint. We just stayed like that for a long moment, forehead to forehead, breathing each other's air, the rain drumming a wild tattoo on the glass ceiling above us. "Raina," he whispered. "My name. Just my name." It was an assurance. "Lorenzo," I breathed back. He shifted, just a fraction of an inch, and his lips brushed mine. It was slow. It was like the rain, building from a drizzle to a downpour. It wasn't a kiss of possession. It was a kiss of discovery. It was hesitant, then sure. It was warm and clean, and it tasted like the mint on his breath and the salt from my own tears. His hand slid from my hair down my back, not pulling me, but supporting me, holding me up. His other hand came to my waist, steadying me. I melted into him. All the fight, all the tension just dissolved. My hands, which had been clenched at my sides, came up. I didn't grab him. I rested them on his chest. I could feel his heart, a slow, steady, powerful beat beneath my palm. It was the calmest thing in the storm-filled room. He deepened the kiss, and it became a conversation. It was all the things we hadn't said. It was the thank you from the pier. It was the be careful from the restaurant. It was the go, now from the kitchen. It was the I'm scared I couldn't say, and the I'm here, he couldn't. My fingers found the top button of his Henley. I fumbled with it. I paused, pulling back just enough to look him in the eyes. He was watching me, his gaze dark and intense. He was waiting. I gave another small nod. He nodded back. I undid the first button, then the second. I was slow, deliberate. My fingers brushed the warm skin of his chest. His heart beat stronger under my touch. A small, shaky laugh escaped me. "Your shirt is damp," I whispered. He'd been walking in the rain before he found me. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "So is yours." He reached for the hem of my thin shirt. He didn't pull it. He just rested his hands there. A question. I took his wrists, guided his hands underneath, and helped him lift it over my head. The air was cool on my skin. We were standing in the middle of his vast, empty apartment, illuminated only by the rain-slicked, blurred lights of the city. He pulled back, just to look at me. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a deep, profound appreciation. He bent, lifting me easily into his arms. I wrapped my arms around his neck, burying my face in the curve of his shoulder. He carried me the few steps to the low bed, and when he laid me down, he never let me go. He came down with me, his hand moving to cradle the back of my neck, supporting me, even now. He kissed me again, and the sound of the rain on the skylight, the dim city lights, the jazz music he'd turned on, so low it was barely audible. It all blurred. It was just the scrape of stubble against my cheek, the solid weight of him, the steady, reassuring beat of his heart under my hand. It was gentle, and it was deep. It was slow, and it was rhythmic as the rain. I felt found. I didn't just feel safe. I felt seen. We faded into the sounds of the storm, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting it. I was part of it. Later. I don't know how much later. I was lying with my head on his chest, his arms wrapped around me. A heavy blanket pulled over us both. The storm had softened. The rain on the skylight was a gentle, rhythmic shush. I was tracing the faint lines of a scar on his collarbone. "The black finch," I whispered into the darkness. "The card you put on the scale, what is it, really?" He was quiet for a long time. I could feel the rumble in his chest as he thought. "When my father lost his boat," he said, his voice a low vibration against my ear. "The men who took it the bank, their logo was a sea eagle, a predator. They were so proud of it." He tightened his arm around me. "I started the Black Finch Fund with the first money I ever made. The finch, it's not a predator. It's a builder. It's a partner. It's just a small bird, but it pays its way." He shifted, turning to look at me in the dim light. "It's not just a symbol, Raina, it's a vow. It means we pay back everything that was taken. We settle the accounts. Thornwell thinks he's a predator, but I'm just a debt collector." I looked up at him. The man who had terrified me in the restaurant, the man who had gently washed the grime from my hands, the man who was going to war for my home. I put my head back on his chest, listening to his heart, the steady thump-thump. The storm was still raging outside. Thornwell was still out there. The fake news about me was still on the internet. My neighbors still hated me. The fight was far from over. But I closed my eyes, and for the first in what felt like 100 years, wrapped in his arms, under the sound of the rain, I slept. I woke up to the sound of silence. The rain on the skylight had stopped. The gray, flat light of a Seattle dawn filled the loft, and for a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I felt the solid weight of Lorenzo's arm draped over my waist. The events of the night before the fight, the breakdown, The impossible tenderness rushed back in. The hard drive was in my backpack on the floor. The next-door post was still on the internet. The victory and the betrayal were tangled up, and I was in the middle. I slipped out of bed. Lorenzo was awake instantly. He didn't startle. He just opened his eyes, fully alert, as if he'd never been asleep at all. "Morning," I whispered. He sat up, the blanket pooling around his waist. "Morning." He was already analyzing. "The vote is Monday. Today is Saturday. We have less than 48 hours to make our move." He got up, pulled on a fresh shirt, and poured 2 cups of coffee, all in one smooth, economical motion. He handed one to me. "It's time." We split into teams. "Teams?" I sipped the coffee. It was black and strong. "Team 1 is retrieval. That's you, Ha-Yun, and Milo." I almost dropped the cup. "Retrieval Lorenzo. I have the drive. Milo's affidavit, the server data, it's in my bag." "That's the digital proof," he said, his voice all business. The lover from last night was gone, replaced by the strategist. "Thornwell can claim that was faked. He can say Milo was coerced. We need the physical trail. The paper, the things he doesn't know are missing yet." He started to pace, ticking items off on his fingers. "We need the hard copy shipping invoices from Northway, the ones that match the skimmer deliveries. We need the fraudulent tax rebate forms he filed for Northway Produce. And," he stopped and looked at me, "we need clear, close-up photographs of the hardware, the POS machines on those pallets. We need evidence that the serial numbers were physically removed. You can't fake a grind mark." "Milo's card still works. For now, gets you in. Ha-Yun's food truck is your transport and your eyes. Her friend, the tech guy who scrambled the library feed, he's already inside Northway's network. He's not running a loop on the security cameras. Loops are amateur. He's running a targeted static script. To any guard. It'll just look like a regional network outage." "And you?" I asked. "Team 2. "Team 2, he said, picking up my backpack, "is the press. I'm taking this drive. Milo's testimony and a team of community lawyers. We're holding a press conference tomorrow, Sunday. We're not just giving the city council the evidence on Monday. We're going to publicly dare them to ignore it." By 10 a.m., I was back in the industrial district. The air smelled like diesel and cold steel. Ha-Yun was parked a block away in her food truck, watching the feed from a drone her friend had patched into the warehouse Wi-Fi. Milo was waiting for me by the side entrance, his face pale and clammy. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "I can't," he whispered, his hands shaking so badly he couldn't hold his keycard steady. "He'll know. He'll my son." I grabbed his wrist, not gently, like Lorenzo had. I grabbed it hard. "Listen to me. Milo, Lorenzo paid the debt, all of it. The Blackfinch Fund posted the full amount this morning. Your wife is clean. The annuity for your son's medical care is in a blind trust. It's done. You're free." I looked him in the eye. "Thornwell doesn't have a leash on you anymore. All you have to do is walk away from the cage." His eyes widened. He hadn't known. He'd been too scared to check. He took a deep, shuddering breath. He looked at the key card. Then he looked at me. His hands stopped shaking. He swiped the card. The light flashed green. "Let's finish this." The warehouse was quiet. Just the hum of the big coolers. As Lorenzo promised, the small, domed security cameras on the ceiling had their green, active lights on, but the lenses were dead. Milo led me straight to the back office. It was a metal cage inside the larger warehouse. He unlocked the door. "Invoices are here. Tax files are here." We worked fast. I felt like I was back at the club, sorting receipts. Only these receipts could bury a billionaire. I found the file TLM 9. I found the tax forms, claiming rebates for fresh produce logistics. I stuffed the originals into my backpack. "The pallets," I whispered. He led me out onto the main floor. In the back, near the moss-green container I'd seen on my first night here, was a stack of pallets covered in black tarps. Milo pulled one back. My breath caught. It was a mountain of them. Thousands of the blank, gray POS terminals. I pulled out my phone and started snapping pictures. I moved in close. The spot where the manufacturer's serial number should have been was just ruined. A patch of raw, scratched-up plastic, as if someone had taken a power sander to every single one. I took photo after photo, the click, click, click of my phone's camera sounding like gunshots in the quiet. Beautiful, aren't they? I froze. My blood turned to ice. A man was standing in the main loading bay, silhouetted against the bright morning light. He was wearing a $1,000 blazer, designer jeans, and a smile so white it hurt my eyes. Jared Thornwell. Milo made a small, strangled sound. "Mr. Thornwell, I didn't know you were scheduled to be here." "I like to drop in. Milo, keep everyone honest." Thornwell strode into the warehouse, his energy sucking all the air out of the room. "And you must be the new auditor." He was looking right at me. I pulled the Northway baseball cap Milo had given me lower, shadowing my eyes. I zipped my jacket up to my chin. "Just checking the inventory," I mumbled, turning my back to him, pretending to count boxes. My heart was going to punch its way out of my chest. "Milo," Thornwell said, his voice dangerously friendly. He walked right up to him and clamped a hand on his shoulder, his grip too tight. "Today is a very big day. The final pieces are moving. That vote on Monday, it's a formality. We're going to build a new Seattle, right on top of that rat warren you people live in." He squeezed. "You're a part of that, Milo. You're on the winning team." Milo was shaking again, but I saw him clench his jaw. "Yes, sir." Rumble. The side-loading door rolled up. Ha-un. She was wearing a bright orange shipping vest and pushing an empty dolly. "Signature for Northway Produce," she yelled, her voice echoing. "Got 12 cases of printer paper? Heavy stuff. Need a signature." Thornwell let out an annoyed sigh. His moment of intimidation ruined. "Milo, for God's sake, handle that. I'm going to check the manifests." He turned and walked deeper into the warehouse, toward the main office. Milo scrambled over, scribbled his name on Ha-Yoon's fake clipboard. She didn't look at me. She just said, "Have a good one," and rolled her empty dolly back out. It was the signal. "Get out, now!" My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Lorenzo. "Trap. FCIB are blocking the Spokane Street Bridge. They aren't waiting for Monday. Thornell knew you were coming. He wasn't there by chance. Get out. Go to the ferry. Pier 52, now." Thornwell's visit wasn't an inspection. It was an ambush. He'd let us in. "Milo, move!" I screamed. We sprinted for the side door. We burst out into the sunlight. Ha-Yoon had the food truck's engine roaring. "Go, ferry terminal, Pier 52. I dove into the passenger seat, Milo piling in the back. Ha-Yoon floored it. The truck fishtailed on the gravel. I looked back. Thornwell was running out of the warehouse, his startup smile gone, replaced by a mask of pure rage. He was yelling into his phone. From a hidden alley, a black, plateless SUV, the FCIB one, roared to life, its lights flashing. It tore after us. "He's right behind us," I yelled. Ha-Yoon was a maniac. She swerved the heavy truck through the Soto traffic, laying on the horn. "The terminal, I see it." We were a block away. The ferry, the Walla Walla, was in the slip, its horn blaring its final departure. The red "Do Not Load" lights were flashing. The SUV was gaining. "He's going to cut us off." "No, he's not," Ha-Yoon yelled. She swerved, driving onto the sidewalk, scattering pedestrians, and cut straight across the parking lot. She hit the ticket booth, smashing the flimsy wooden arm into 1,000 pieces. "Ha-Yoon, the ramp!" I screamed. It was already pulling up. "Hold on." She didn't slow down. She hit the metal ramp with a deafening crash. The truck went airborne for a terrifying second, then slammed down onto the vehicle deck of the ferry with a sound like a bomb going off. We were on the ramp closed. The black SUV skidded to a stop on the pier, blocked, just yards away. I let out a ragged breath. We'd made it. Not yet. I looked up. Jared Thornwell was standing 10 feet away, next to his sleek black Tesla. He must have had a car already waiting in the ferry line. He was trapped on this boat with us. The wind whipped across the open deck, tearing at my hair. Thornwell walked toward us, his blazer flapping. He looked completely unhinged. "Give me the drive! Raina!" he screamed over the howl of the wind. "I know who you are. I saw the next-door post. You're the little spy." He was lunging, reaching for my backpack. My phone rang, a video call. Lorenzo. I answered it. I jammed my thumb on the screen and aimed the camera right at Thornwell's furious face. "Jared," Lorenzo's voice boomed from the speaker, calm and clear. "Having a problem with my friend. Why don't we talk about this publicly? I'm sure the Seattle Times would love to hear your side of the story." Thornwell froze. His hand, which had been inches from my bag, stopped. He stared at the phone. He saw Lorenzo's face. He saw his own, enraged, trapped on a state-run ferry, harassing a citizen. He snarled, a low, animal sound. He didn't say a word. He just hung up the call on Lorenzo. He knew he was beaten. He couldn't touch me. Not while he was on camera. But he wasn't the only one being filmed. Ha-Yun still had her phone out. She wasn't filming Thornwell. She was filming the pier we'd left behind. The fake PSCC goons, furious, had piled out of their SUV. They were screaming at the ferry workers, shoving them, trying to get them to lower the ramp. Ha-Yun was live-streaming the whole thing anonymously. "Thornwell's private port security attacking city employees," she typed, her thumbs flying. The viewer count on the stream exploded. 10, 50, 300, a comment popped up. "This is Sarah Jenkins with King 5 News. Who is this? Please DM me. We are on our way." Thornwell saw it. He saw Ha-Yun's phone. He looked at the pier, and he looked at me. His perfect, curated world was crumbling. Live on the internet, he turned, got in his Tesla, and disappeared into the car deck. The ferry docked. We didn't wait. Ha-Yun drove us off, and we got on the next ferry heading right back to Seattle. An hour later, we were at the fish market. Not the main floor. Lorenzo's lawyer, a woman with steel gray hair and an expression to match, was waiting for us in the back, by the blast freezers. "Miss Park, Miss Kim, Mr. Greer." I unzipped my backpack. I handed her the cold drive. I handed her the stolen files. I handed her my phone with the pictures of the ground-off serial numbers. "It's all there," I said, my voice hoarse. She took it, placed it all in a heavy-duty legal briefcase, and snapped it shut. "This is no longer a rumor," she said. "This is a criminal case." She nodded and was gone. We did it. I walked out of the alley. Ha-Yun and Milo behind me. I felt light. I was exhausted, but I was light. We won. There she is. My blood ran cold. "Mr. Dallow." He was standing at the mouth of the alley, blocking our path. He wasn't alone. He had 2 of his Bureau of Civic Compliance thugs with him. "Raina Park," he sneered, holding up a piece of paper. The pink paper. "I saw the next-door post. You're a spy. You're consorting with known criminals. You've been working with the very gangs this community is trying to get rid of." "What are you talking about?" I stammered. "You violated the moral conduct clause of your lease," he shouted, enjoying the theater of it. "I am serving you with an immediate 24-hour eviction. You're out." He was using Thornwell's lie to evict me. This was it, the final, pathetic move. "You can't do that." "I'm afraid he can't." Lorenzo's voice. He walked into the alley from the street, wearing a dark, perfectly tailored suit. He looked calm, powerful, and completely in charge. He was holding a leather folio. "Gravano," Dallow sputtered. "You stay out of this. This is a private landlord-tenant matter." "No," Lorenzo said, his voice dangerously quiet. "It's not. As of 8 a.m. this morning, the Blackfinch Community Trust acquired the master note on all Dallow management properties, including," he smiled, "the mortgage for the Beacon Court building, which, I noted, was in default." Dallow's face went from an angry red to a sickly, pale white. "The bank was eager to offload your debt," Lorenzo continued, walking closer. "You're late on your payments. Mr. Dallow, very sloppy, which means you don't have any tenants. You're just a renter like everyone else. And he stopped, standing right in front of Dallow, am your new landlord." He looked at me. just a quick glance. But it was everything. "Now," he said, turning back to Dallow, his voice dropping. "Get off my property." Monday morning, City Hall. The air in the hearing room was thick, smelling of old wood, wet wool coats, and stale coffee. It was a formal, public execution, and we were either the executioners or the condemned. We were Team 1 me, Ha-Yun, Milo, and our lawyer, Miss Eris, the woman with the steel gray hair. We sat in the front row, a small island of nervous energy. Milo looked like he was going to be sick, but he was here. Ha-Yun was vibrating, her phone on her lap, ready to record. Team 2 was Lorenzo. He wasn't sitting with us. He was standing in the back by the oak doors, his arms crossed, and he wasn't a witness or a plaintiff. He was just watching, a shadow in a perfect suit, letting us have the light. And then there was Team Thornwell. He strode in at 9:05, all bright colors and blinding white teeth. He wore a sharp, light gray suit, a vibrant blue tie, and a smile that belonged on a billboard. He was flanked by 6 lawyers who all looked like they were carved from expensive, unforgiving wood. We will now hear testimony regarding the proposed sale of the Beacon Court properties to the Better Harbor Charitable Fund. The council president, a woman with an exhausted face, announced. Jared Thornwell was first. He was magnificent. He didn't just walk to the podium, he owned it. He clicked his remote, and a beautiful rendering of a glass and steel campus filled the screens behind him. "This," he said, his voice resonating with that perfect, inspiring startup cadence, "is not just a building. It's a new beginning, a green innovation hub, a promise to move Seattle forward." He spoke of synergy, community integration, and sustainable futures. He made our tenement building sound like a plague that he was graciously offering to cure. "The Better Harbor Fund," he concluded, smiling warmly at the council, "is offering 30% above market value, a generous relocation package for the handful of current residents, and a brighter future for the entire district. This isn't just a sale, it's a gift." The council members were nodding. They were eating it up. "Thank you, Mr. Thornwell." The president said, "We will now hear from Miss Aris, representing the Beacon Court Residents Association." Miss Aris walked to the podium. She placed a single, thin file on the wood. "Thank you. Madam President, I have no glossy renderings. I have only facts. First, I would like to call Miss Raina Park, a resident of Beacon Court." My name echoed in the chamber. Every head turned. I saw Thornwell's lawyers whisper to him. He just smiled. That confident, brilliant smile. I was the spy from the next-door post. I was a discredited witness. I walked to the podium. My knees felt like water. I could feel Lorenzo's gaze on my back, a solid, steady pressure. "Miss Park," Eris said, her voice calm, "can you please describe your experience as a tenant under Mr. Thornwell's management?" I gripped the sides of the podium. "I'm a waitress. I worked 2 jobs. We always paid our rent." I looked at the council members, at their skeptical, tired faces. Then Mr. Dallow, our landlord, he started threatening us. He said he'd call the Bureau of Civic Compliance. He said they'd take our things. He served me an eviction notice based on a false post on the internet. A post. I looked right at Thornwell. That called me a criminal. Thornwell's lawyer stood up. "Objection, this is hearsay. It's libelous, Mr. Thornwell does not manage these properties." Doesn't he, Miss?" Eris's voice cut through. "Let's find out." She clicked her own remote. The screen changed. Thornwell's beautiful rendering vanished. It was replaced by a flowchart. My flowchart, the one Lorenzo had shown me in the alley. "This," Eris said, her voice amplifying in the quiet room, "is the machine. It starts with Mr. Thornwell's Alder Ridge Capital. It flows to Novastar Logistics, which funds a shell company called Northway Produce." I could see Thornwell's smile tighten. Aris continued, "Northway Produce then funnels its profits, which we will get to in a moment, directly into the Better Harbor Charitable Fund, the same fund that is now piously offering to save our city." The room was silent. A councilman leaned forward. "Miss Eris, that's a serious allegation. Where is the proof? The proof, Aris said, is in their paperwork. Click. The screen changed. A scanned document, one of the ones I'd taken from Milo's office. This is an invoice from Northway Produce. Aris said, note the date. Note the invoice number, 103. Now, the next one. Click. Invoice 104. Click. Invoice 105. Click. And invoice 102. From the next day, the invoices are being numbered backwards in a crude, simple attempt to cook the books. A murmur went through the room. Thornwell's smile was gone. And what, Aris continued, her voice like a hammer, is Northway Produce shipping fresh pineapples, Korean pears, no Miss Park? Please tell the council what you saw. Click. My video, my shaky, grainy video filled the screen. The council members leaned in. There it was. The moss green container, the fake TLM-9 crates, vessel opening one, the blank, gray POS terminals. Skimmers, Aris said. Ghost hardware, thousands of them, shipped into our city under the guise of produce, then used to steal from every customer, every tourist, every resident with the stolen funds landing right in Mr. Thornwell's charity. The room erupted. Thornwell was on his feet, his lawyers all shouting at once. This is an outrage, a fabrication, Thornwell yelled, shoving his own lawyer aside to get to the microphone. This is a preposterous, faked video. You want to know who is behind this? You want to know who really arranged this little performance? He pointed, a single, dramatic finger, aimed at the back of the room, at the shadow by the door. That man, Lorenzo Gravano, a known racketeer, a career criminal whose family has preyed on this coast for decades. You are not listening to a concerned tenant. You are listening to a puppet. This is a sham, funded and directed by a mafia boss who wants to keep the port dirty. The room fell silent again, the new accusation hanging in the air. All eyes went from Thornwell to Lorenzo. Lorenzo didn't move. He just slowly, deliberately pushed himself off the wall. He took 2 steps forward, into the aisle, into the light. He wasn't armed. He wasn't flanked by lawyers. He was just a man in a suit. Madam President, he said, his voice calm, but it filled the room without any effort. Mr. Thornwell is right about one thing. I am not a saint. My name is what it is. He looked at Thornwell. But my reputation isn't on trial here. His numbers are... He looked back at the council. My past is complicated. But the video, Miss Park took is not the manifests Mr. Greer provided or not the ground-off serial numbers. Click. Eris put up one of my close-up photos. Are not, I may be a dirty man, as he says, but my money is clean, and his is sitting right there on that screen, stolen from the people you're supposed to be protecting. A councilman, a nervous-looking man named Davies, cleared his throat. But Miss Aris, we received a report from the PSCC, the Port Security Commission of Cascadia. They investigated Novastar. They confirmed no wrongdoing. Thornwell smiled, his ace in the hole. He had the official word. Miss Aris smiled back. It was a terrifying sight. Councilman Davies, thank you for bringing that up. The PSCC, a quasi-public entity, funded entirely by Alder Ridge Capital. The air went out of the room. It's a private security force, gentlemen, Aris said, not a city agency. And as for their professionalism... Click. The screen changed again. Hayoon's live stream, the one from the ferry. The council watched in stunned silence as 4 men in PSCC vests shoved a uniformed city ferry worker, screaming at him to lower the ramp. The timestamp was from Saturday. This, Aris said, is Jared Thornwell's port security, attacking city employees in broad daylight because they were trying to chase down my other client, Miss Ha-Yoon Kim, who was also a witness. Thornwell looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He was staring at the screen, speechless. And, Aris continued, what about his other security force, the Federal Commercial Integrity Bureau? A side door to the chamber opened. An aide hurried in and handed a piece of paper to the council president. The president looked at it, her eyes widening. I have just been handed an urgent communique from the FCIB. Thornwell's lawyer actually smiled. He thought this was his moment. The council president read, her voice dripping with disbelief. It's an official threat. It warns the council against interfering in an active federal investigation into Lorenzo Gravano, or it will pursue legal action against the council itself. The room was dead silent. Thornwell was saved. A federal agency had just backed him up. The president looked up from the paper, her face a mask of cold fury. And this official federal threat, she said, her voice shaking with rage, was sent from a Gmail address. Laughter. It started as a snort from someone in the back, then it became a wave. The council members were staring at Thornwell, not with suspicion, but with open contempt. He'd been exposed as a fraud, a clumsy one. A Gmail address, the president yelled, slamming her gavel. This hearing is a circus, mister. Thornwell, you have brought fake cops into my city. The crowd, packed with residents from Beacon Court, erupted in applause. I move to vote, Councilman Davies yelled, his voice suddenly brave. I move to indefinitely postpone the sale of the Beacon Court properties, and I move to open a formal, independent investigation into the Better Harbor Fund, Alder Ridge Capital, and Mr. Jared Thornwell. Second. All in favor. It was unanimous, a sea of eyes. Thornwell just stood there, his face white, his mouth opening and closing. He was drowning. And then he made his final mistake. He lost control. You can't, he shrieked, his voice cracking. You idiots, you're ruining everything. You people have no idea how complicated the payment supply chain is. He'd said it in a room full of reporters. He'd admitted it. He knew exactly what was in those crates. He wasn't a victim of a conspiracy. He was the conspiracy. His lawyers grabbed him, physically pulling him out of the room as the cameras flashed. We had won. We slipped out a side door as the press swarmed Thornwell's chaotic exit. We stepped out into the street, and, as if on cue, the rain began to fall. It was a soft, gentle rain this time, the kind that washes things clean. Reporters found us anyway, microphones and cameras shoved in my face. Miss. Park, miss. Park. How does it feel? I couldn't breathe. The lights were blinding. I was frozen. And then, just like that first night, he was there. Lorenzo. He moved through the crowd, an umbrella snapping open. He didn't push. He just parted them. He put his arm around my back, pulling me against his side. He held the umbrella over me, shielding me. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear. Breathe. Raina, it's over. He steered me through the chaos, a solid, warm presence in the storm. As we reached the curb, he used his free hand to gently pull the hood of my jacket up over my head, his fingers brushing my temple. It was the same simple, protective gesture from the boat, from his apartment. I looked up at him. I could see the victory in his eyes, but also the quiet. The debt was settled. I smiled, a real smile, and for the first time, I felt the lightness in my chest that wasn't just adrenaline, it was hope. I thought, we did it. He did it. We're safe. But as we got into his car, the press still tapping on the glass, a single, cold thought threaded its way through the victory. The burner phone. The message, do not trust Gravano. Thornwell was done. Lorenzo had won. But Lorenzo wasn't the one who gave me the phone. He confirmed that himself. The anonymous messenger, the one who'd warned me about Lorenzo, was still out there. The game was over, but I had a feeling I still didn't know all the players. The victory at City Hall was a clean, bright flash, but it left a dark afterimage. We'd won. We'd saved Beacon Court. Lorenzo had beaten Thornwell at his own game, using the law, the press, and the truth as weapons. I should have been celebrating, but I wasn't. We were back at my apartment. My neighbors, after seeing the news, had been apologetic. Awkward, they'd brought me a fruit basket, but the trust was gone. Cracked like my old phone screen, and one question still sat in my chest, heavy and cold as a wet stone. The burner phone. Lorenzo had admitted he didn't give it to me. He'd used the situation, but he hadn't created it. The warning, "Do not trust Gravano," still echoed in my head. Someone else had put me in play. Someone else had aimed me at Lorenzo, at Thornwell. Someone else was still in the shadows. I'd kept the phone hidden under my mattress. That night, as the rain started to fall again, it buzzed. One last time. The screen lit up with the same anonymous, self-deleting message. Warehouse 12, Old Ballpark. You want the truth? Come get it. Alone. My blood went cold. This was it, the final piece. I grabbed my jacket. I wasn't going to tell Lorenzo. This was my loose end, not his, but I wasn't stupid enough to go alone. I grabbed Hyun. "I'm not letting you go there," she said, her face pale. "I'm not asking. Hyun, you're driving. You're my exit. Just like at the library. You park. You wait. If I'm not out in 10 minutes, you call Lorenzo. You call the police. You call everyone." She didn't argue. She just nodded, her jaw tight. The warehouse was at the edge of a defunct rail yard, its windows boarded up, its sheet metal siding rattling in the rising wind. It smelled of rust and damp earth. Ha-Yoon parked the food truck in the shadow of a rusted-out boxcar. I walked in. The vast, empty space was lit by a single, flickering halogen work light. "Hello," I called out, my voice sounding small. "Over here." Milo Greer stepped out from behind a stack of shipping crates. I stopped dead. "Milo, you sent the message. You were the one." He was shaking. He looked worse than he had at the courthouse. He looked broken. "I had to. Raina," he whispered, his eyes darting to the dark corners of the warehouse. "I had to tell you. It wasn't I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "What, Milo? What didn't you mean?" "The phone," he said, the words tumbling out. "The burner phone at the North Pier Supper Club, the one that started it all. I left it for you." I just stared at him. The whole narrative I'd built it was wrong. "But why you didn't know me? You were working for Thornwell." He licked his lips, his gaze flicking to the warehouse door, to the darkness where Ha-Yoon was waiting. "I wasn't given the order by Gravano. I was told to do it by her." He was looking past me, at the doorway. My heart stopped. Ha-Eun was standing there. She wasn't in the truck. She'd followed me in. Her face was a mask of guilt. I turned, very slowly, to look at my cousin. The blood drained from my face. "Ha-Eun!" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "No," I whispered. "No, tell me he's lying." "Raina, she started, her voice thick with unshed tears. "You," I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "The tech friend who helped with the truck, the anonymous live stream, your sudden calm when I told you I had to go to the warehouse. You knew all of it." "He was going to take the truck," she finally burst out, tears streaming down her face. "Dallo. The bureau, they were going to seize it for my debts. I was looking for a way out. I found a message board about predatory lenders. It led me to the Black Finch, to him." "To Lorenzo," I said, my voice dead. His people, they were already investigating Thornwell. But they were stuck. They had no way in. They needed a witness. Someone clean. Someone Thornwell couldn't connect to Gravano. Someone who lived in the building. I finished for her. Someone disposable. Someone like me. The betrayal was so profound. It almost made me laugh. My own family. You fed me to them. Ha-Yoon, you set me up. You let me walk onto that pier. You let me get cornered. You knew all of it was a setup. "It was the only way," she cried. "He could save us. He could save Beacon Court." "He didn't save me," I said, my voice as cold as the rain. "He just aimed me." "No." Lorenzo's voice, and he was standing at the warehouse door, just behind Ha-Yoon, the shadow I could never quite escape. I spun on him, all the pain, all the fear, all the exhaustion of the past 2 weeks erupting as pure, white-hot rage. You knew I didn't think you'd be so reckless. You choose. You pretended. It was all a lie. You were just watching your little experiment, waiting to see if the pawn would make it to the other side of the board. He walked into the light. His face wasn't the calm, strategic mask from the courthouse or the gentle, tender one from his apartment. It was raw. It was filled with a regret so deep it looked like pain. It wasn't a lie. Raina, not all of it. His voice was low. Ha-Yun came to me. She was desperate. I saw an opportunity, a clean witness, a way in. So you used me? Yes, he said. No hesitation. I chose the chance to take Thornwell down over your safety. I told myself it was the only move. I told myself I could protect you from the fallout, but I didn't account for us. He looked at me, and I saw the man from the skylight. It was a calculation. Raina. And it was wrong. I'm sorry. I stared at him, my heart breaking. He'd admitted it. He'd used me, just as badly as Thornwell had used Milo. Before I could find a single word, before I could scream or cry, the warehouse was flooded. Blinding, high-intensity headlights, a black SUV, the one from the ferry, the one from the pier, skidded to a halt on the gravel, its engine roaring. The doors burst open. Jared Thornwell. He wasn't in a suit. He was in tactical gear, his eyes wild, manic. He had nothing left. He was a cornered animal. Anthony and two other PSCC goons, also in tactical vests, fanned out behind him. "The game is not over! Gravano!" he shrieked, his voice cracking with hysteria. He was holding a heavy-duty zip tie. He saw Milo. You worthless, backstabbing rat!" He lunged. Anthony grabbed Milo from behind, slamming him against a metal support beam. Thornwell grabbed Milo's hands, cinching the thick plastic tie around his wrists. "The game ends here," Thornwell snarled, his eyes bugging. "You all go in the water." I didn't even think. I moved, shoving Ha-Eun behind me, putting myself between her and Thornwell's men. "Jared, that's enough." The voice was new. It was quiet, frail, but it cut through the noise. Two people stepped out from the shadows behind Lorenzo. I hadn't even seen them arrive. One was an old woman, thin as a bird, wrapped in a worn, plaid tartan shawl. Her hair was white, but her eyes were Lorenzo's, forged from the same hard, dark steel. The other was an older gentleman in a rumpled suit, clutching a worn leather briefcase. Thornwell spun around. "Who the hell are you? Get out of my way, you old—" "You don't remember me, do you?" "Jared," the woman said. She took a frail step into the light. "But your father, Arthur, certainly did. He wrote me letters for almost 20 years. Lorenzo's voice was quiet. "Raina, Ha-Yun, this is my mother, Lucille Gravano." Thornwell stopped. The name hit him. He knew it. "Your father," Lucille continued, her voice gaining strength, "was a very thorough man. He founded Alder Ridge Capital, and before that, he founded a little fund called Seaboard Equities, the one that acquired my husband's business, my home." "That's a lie," Jared spat. "My father was a legitimate businessman." "Was he?" The man in the rumpled suit stepped forward. "I am Mr. Davies, notary public for the Blackfinch Trust. Mrs. Gravano, here, is the sole administrator and beneficiary of that trust. Your father established it for her in a fit of conscience. Lorenzo merely acts as its agent." Lucille reached into the briefcase. She pulled out a stack of faded, airmail letters. Arthur was sentimental. He detailed his entire process, how he'd buy the debt, create the community bureau to apply pressure, use a shell company to move the assets, and a charitable fund to wash them clean. She held up a letter, the paper trembling in her hand. He even used the same name for his primary shell, Northway. He was so proud of his system, the one you've been running. Jared, the exact same one. Jared's face went white. This wasn't a corporate file. This was a handwritten confession. The origin of his entire empire, a scam he hadn't even invented. You have nothing?" he stammered. "We have his letters, Jared," Lorenzo said, his voice flat. "It's over." Thornwell's eyes went from panic to dead. He let out a high-pitched, strangled sound. He fumbled for his radio, mashing the button. PSCC all teams code 3. Officer down my location, fire on all hostiles. He was calling his entire private army. Sirens, not cops, the high-low wee-woo of his private force. Crash, crash. The high windows of the warehouse exploded. Smoke canisters. Thick, acrid smoke began to fill the room, stinging my eyes. Red and blue strobes from Thornwell's SUV flashed, cutting through the fog. It was chaos. Back this way, Lorenzo yelled, grabbing his mother's arm. He grabbed mine. We're leaving. In the middle of the smoke, the flashing lights, the shouting, I stopped. I yanked my arm from his grasp. This was it. The moment he dragged me out, the Mafia boss taking control. I looked him right in the eye. Lorenzo, promise me, right now, you won't become him. You won't be this. You settle the debt. You don't become the predator. He stared at me, his face a grim mask in the swirling red smoke. The sirens were deafening. He nodded once. A sharp, absolute vow. I won't. This way, Ha-Un was yelling. She was pulling us toward a side door. She was holding her phone, its screen glowing in the smoke. He's getting away, she shouted. Thornwell's in his SUV. He's moving. On her screen was a map, a single, blinking blue dot. What is that? I coughed, my lungs burning. The ferry, she yelled back, a grim, wild smile on her face. When he was screaming at us, I dropped my keys, slipped an AirTag right under his rear bumper. I knew he wouldn't just quit. He's running. The dot was moving fast, north. He's heading for the Aurora Bridge, Lorenzo said, his voice pure steel. He's not running from us. He's running to something. Let's go, Ha-Un said. Let's finish it. We didn't drive. We flew. We tore through the night. Ha-Yun's food truck rattling like it was coming apart, her phone in my hand, the blue dot of the AirTag, our only guide. He's heading north, I said, my voice tight. Up the viaduct. He's on the Aurora Bridge. He's not running from us, Lorenzo said from the passenger seat, his voice a low, dangerous hum. He'd sent his mother and the notary in his car. He was with us. He's running to his escape route. He's trying to get to his men. Ha-Yun took the exit, her tires screaming. We raced up the approach ramp. And there it was. High over the black water of Lake Union, the wind was a physical monster. It howled, shaking the entire truck, and in the middle of the bridge, under the sickly orange glow of the streetlights, was a roadblock. Not police. It was Thornwell's private army. 2 black PSCC-labeled SUVs parked sideways, blocking all lanes. And Jared, he was standing in the middle of it all, his Tesla parked beside him. He wasn't cowering, he was performing. He had his phone on a gimbal, a bright ring light attached, and he was live streaming. His face a mask of righteous fury, his hair whipping in the wind. "And this is what it's come to," he yelled into his phone. "The criminal Lorenzo Gravano and his associates have kidnapped one of my employees, Milo Greer." He pointed the camera at his own SUV, where I could see Milo, still bound, in the back. "They've threatened his family. They've tried to extort my company, but we will not bow to terrorists. We are here. We are waiting for real law enforcement." He'd flipped it, in one move. He'd painted us as the criminals. The comments on his stream must have been exploding. "He's brilliant," Ha-Un breathed, horrified. "He's desperate," Lorenzo said. He unbuckled his seatbelt. "And he's out of moves." He stepped out of the truck. The wind almost tore the door from his hand. He didn't button his suit. He just stood there, a solid, unmovable object in the middle of the tempest. "Jared," his voice boomed, cutting through the wind, "this is over. It's just you and me. Let Milo go." "Stay back." "Gravano," Thornwell shrieked, aiming his camera. "You're on live feed. 10,000 people are watching you threaten me." Lorenzo held his hands up, palms out. No threats. He took a slow walk into the no man's land between our truck and his roadblock. "Let's make a deal, a civilized one. You want what's on my phone. My contact's the Blackfinch data. It's yours. You let Milo walk over to us and I'll walk over to you. I'll give you the phone, the data, everything. And we walk away." I stared at him. What the data was with Eris. He was bluffing. This was a distraction. He was buying time. But for what? Then it hit me. My mind flashed back to the City Hall hearing, to Thornwell's final, panicked scream. You people have no idea how complicated the payment supply chain is. My mind flashed back to the first photograph, the moss green container, the stenciled code 7K. My mind flashed back to the manifests I stole, the TLM9 skimmers, the shipping code 7K. He hadn't just confessed, he'd given us the SKU number. I grabbed Ha-Un's arm. His live stream. Is it still going? Yes, and so is mine. I never stopped it. I grabbed my own phone and hit Go Live. I stepped out of the truck. The wind tore at me, stinging my eyes. Jared, I yelled. He spun, surprised, his camera swinging to me. The spy, it's the little spy. Hi, everyone, I shouted, looking right past him, at his phone, at my phone, at Ha-Yun's. My name is Raina Park. I'm one of the rats, mister. Thornwell is trying to save. I held up my phone, my fingers shaking, and pulled up the screenshot of the City Hall FCIB threat. Mister, Thornwell has federal partners. This is their official letterhead. Notice the Gmail address. I pulled up the photo from the ferry, and this is his port security force assaulting a city ferry worker. Jared was screaming at me, but I just talked over him. But he's right about one thing. The payment supply chain is complicated, isn't it, Jared, especially when you're using container designation 7K to ship illegal, blank serial number card skimmers through a produce company. Jared froze. His face went white. It was a direct hit. He knew that code. His 10,000 viewers had just heard it. And a calm, clear voice said, speaking of legal documents, Lucille Gravano stepped out of the darkness, the wind whipping her tartan shawl. Mr. Davies, the notary, was right behind her, his briefcase clutched tight. Jared Thornwell, she said, walking right up to him. He was so stunned, he just stared at her. Lucille pulled a sheaf of papers from the briefcase. This is the original charter for the Blackfinch Trust, the one your father, Arthur, signed. I am Lucille Gravano, the administrator, and this, she read, her voice as clear as a bell, is the morality clause. Should any agent of the trust, that would be you. Jared used the fund's assets for predatory, illegal, or extortionist activities. All assets held in the trust shall be immediately forfeited and transferred, in full, to the registered victims of said activities. She looked up, her steel gray eyes locking with his, and the primary name on that list of victims is the Beacon Court Residents Association. That was it, the final pin. He'd lost the money. He'd lost the narrative. He'd lost everything. Jared let out a sound, a high, thin, animal wail. He snapped. He sprinted to his SUV, yanked the door open, and dragged Milo out. He had a knife. He cut Milo's leg restraints, then pressed the blade to his throat. He dragged the terrified man backward, right to the edge of the bridge's railing. Everybody back, Jared shrieked, his eyes wild. I'll do it, I'll drop him. Get back. The PSCC goons raised their weapons. From the darkness behind our truck, I saw them Lorenzo's men, the ones from the warehouse, fanning out, their own weapons raised. No, Lorenzo roared. It was the loudest I'd ever heard him. He held his hand up, palm out. Stand down, all of you, guns down now. His men lowered their weapons. The PSCC men, confused, hesitated. Lorenzo was looking at me. He had done his part. He had kept his promise. He was de-escalating. It was my turn. I held my own hands up. I walked forward, slowly. Milo, I said, my voice as calm as I could make it. Milo, it's me. It's Raina. Shut up, Jared screamed, pressing the knife harder. Milo, you're free, I said, my eyes locked on his. I ignored Jared completely. It's over. The debt is gone. Lucille paid it. Your son, he's safe. He's waiting for you. I took another step. It's Saturday night, Milo. You told me you make pasta for him on Saturdays. He's waiting for his dinner. I wasn't pleading, I was just stating a fact. Dinner was waiting. Milo stopped struggling. He was staring at me, really seeing me. The terror in his eyes was replaced by recognition. Jared saw the shift. He's lying to you. They're all lying. Milo just sagged. He let all the tension out of his body, and then, in one fast, desperate move, he stomped his heel down on Jared's instep and dropped his full weight, rolling away, free. Jared stumbled, left holding a knife to the empty air. The PSCC goons saw it. They saw the live stream, which Ha-Yoon's phone showed now had over 300,000 viewers. They saw their boss, alone, holding a knife on a bridge. They dropped their guns. It was over. Jared, in a final, pathetic act of panic, scrambled back to his SUV. He floored it. He smashed right through his own flimsy roadblock and sped down the open bridge. Scree-ee. From the other end of the bridge, flashing lights, not fake ones, real ones. A solid wall of Seattle Police Department cruisers, blocking the exit. Ha-Yoon's AirTag had led them right to him. Jared slammed on his brakes. The Tesla, on the rain-slick pavement, spun in a perfect, sickening 180-degree turn. It slid, smoking, and came to a stop, surrounded. We heard the whoop of the police bullhorn. Jared Thornwell, you are under arrest. Lorenzo didn't even watch. He walked over to me, in the middle of the bridge, the wind tearing at us. He looked at Ha-Yoon's phone. Still live. He looked at me. Then he knelt. He took the briefcase from his mother. He opened it. He pulled out the cold drive, the stolen invoices, the fake tax returns, his mother's letters. He held them up to the camera, to the city, to the world. This is the truth, he said, his voice raw. This is the proof. Jared Thornwell is a thief, and we, he looked right at me, are the residents. The city council held an emergency session that night. By 3 a.m., the Better Harbor project was indefinitely suspended. By dawn, the Blackfinch Trust, now proven to be criminally misused, was legally transferred in its entirety to the newly formed Beacon Court Residence Co-op. We didn't just have our homes, we owned the building. That night, the rain was a soft drizzle, washing the city clean. Lorenzo was at my door. I'm walking you home. We walked. We didn't talk about Thornwell or the trust. We just walked. He stopped me under the red neon awning of the corner bodega, the one that always smells like stale beer and spices. The city was just wet reflections. He turned, taking both my hands. His were warm. I promised you I'd stand in the rain, Raina, and I promised I wouldn't become him. He met my eyes. From now on, if you want me, I'm going to learn how to leave the shadows. I'm going to learn how to stand in the light. I felt the tears, the good tears, well up. I want that, Lorenzo, but I have one condition. He waited. The Blackfinch Fund, the real one. No more shadows. No more back alley deals. You want to be in the light, open the books. Make it transparent for the community. He didn't hesitate, not for a second. Done! He leaned in. He kissed me. It wasn't the desperate, fiery kiss from his apartment. This was slow. It was warm. It was a promise. It tasted like rain and, for the first time in my life, like a future. The next morning, I was at the North Pier Supper Club, my apron on. The Seattle Times was on the counter. The headline was huge. Aurora Bridge Showdown, how residents took down a billionaire. The bell over the door jingled. Lorenzo walked in, wearing his wool coat. He looked just like a customer. He smiled at me. Morning, Raina, it's raining out. He paused, a flicker of that first night mischief in his eyes. Do you have an umbrella? I smiled back. I reached under the counter and pulled out our umbrella, the one he'd held over me. I held it up, and he nodded. Lorenzo was true to his word. He started to divest. He used the remnants of his old world to start a new fund, the Rainy Market Fund, giving small loans to the port businesses Thornwell had tried to destroy. And me, I re-enrolled. I'm back in school, studying community finance. Sometimes, when the Seattle rain is really coming down, we still walk home from the club, and he always tilts the umbrella my way. Thank you so much for listening to our story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below so we can all connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video. And if you enjoyed this ride, hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people.